Is 7 o'clock and it looks like we have a full quorum this evening. So with that, we will go ahead and call to order. Tonight is the February 23rd Albany Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. With that, can we get roll call, please, staff?
Yes. Commissioner Donaldson?
Here.
Commissioner Moman? Commissioner Pilch?
Present.
Commissioner McLeod?
Here.
And Chair Waddy?
Here. And I will also go ahead right now and read the following land acknowledgement statement into the record. The City of Albany recognizes that we occupy the land originally protected by the Confederated Villages of the Lisjan. We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands and must make strides to repay the moral debt that is owed to this indigenous people, specifically the Ohlone tribe. We thank them for their contributions, which have transformed our community and will continue to bring forth growth and unity. The City of Albany commits to sustaining ongoing relationships with the tribe and together build a better future for all that now make this their home. With that, we will move on to item 3 on our agenda, ex parte communications. Are there any ex parte communications to disclose this evening?
No.
Did you raise your hand, Commissioner Donaldson? Yes.
Yes, actually, I was visiting 1600 Solano today and saw and talked to a neighbor who saw me out there with my papers. And so, and I think that neighbor will probably be speaking tonight. At least I think she said she would. Okay.
Great. Okay, thank you. Seeing no one else, we will go ahead and move on to item 4 on our agenda, the consent calendar. We do have a couple items on the consent calendar this evening. The consent calendar items are considered to be routine and will be enacted on by one motion. By approval of the consent calendar, staff recommendations will be adopted unless otherwise modified by the commission, and there will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the commission or a member of the public wishes to remove any of these items from the consent calendar. So we have 2 items. First up, we have item 4-1, the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes from January 26th. And item 4-2, planning application 22-009, design review amendment for a 2-level addition at 840 Masonic. First up, do we have any commissioners that wish to remove either of those from the consent calendar? Commissioner Moman?
Yeah, I have a comment on my remarks for 1600 Solana Avenue study station. I think they have not been completely recorded in the minutes. I would request the staff to take a relook on the videos and record them. If there is any difficulty, understanding or comprehending me or any audio issue or something, I'm happy to recollect my, comments and send them in an email or something.
Okay. Any other comments on either of the 2 consent calendar items? Commissioner Donaldson?
Mohammed, does that mean you're asking sort of a continuation of the minutes so they can?
No, you just my comments have not been like the items that I, the issues I addressed, raised, or the things that I commented on have not been, they are not reflecting in the minutes. And so I would just request the staff to, we have the video recording, they can just, listen to that and, take notes from them.
All right.
Okay. And I'm not sure if we can make a motion with that general of direction. So maybe if we could, if there's somebody open to making a motion on this, maybe it would be best for us to continue that out to the next hearing, and staff can work offline to get those corrected so that the minutes actually reflect your thoughts and words properly. I don't think there's probably a rush to get those recorded today if we've got some concerns with them. Does that sound okay, staff?
Yeah, that sounds fine. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Then with that in mind, that we are going to continue the minutes out. Do we want to continue them out? We'll just continue them. They don't need to be noticed. We can just continue them indefinitely, and you guys will put them on the agenda whenever they're right for adoption. Sure. So with that, we have 1 remaining item on the consent calendar. That's item 4-2 for design review at 840 Masonic. Why don't we go ahead and open up public comment then? So if there are any members of the public who would wish to pull Masonic off of the consent calendar, now is your opportunity to speak. Staff, do we have any members of the public?
Chair Waddy, this is Jeff Bond. I'll be running the clock tonight. And yes, it looks like we have one member of the public with their hand raised.
Okay.
Samudra, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name, but please go ahead. Well, it looks like the hand went down.
Okay.
No, we now have another hand that just popped up. Okay, Karen, please go ahead. You may need to unmute, Karen.
Karen, we can't hear you, but we do see you, so you may need to unmute yourself, but now is your opportunity to speak on the consent calendar items.
Yes.
Go ahead, we can hear you now.
Yes, so I'm part of our neighborhood group who is want to comment on the new proposal for a Montessori Center at 1600.
Sure, and I hate to interrupt you, but now is not the moment to speak on that item. We will call that item later on this evening's agenda.
Okay.
Right now, we are just taking public comment on 840 Masonic Avenue in the minutes.
Okay, I don't have.
Okay, so with that, last call for members of the public. If anyone wishes to speak on the consent calendar items, please raise your hand. Otherwise, please lower your hand if you wish to speak on a later item.
It looks like Dojin, please go ahead.
Oh, hello. Actually, my name is Dong Jin Seo, and actually, I'm the design architect for this project. One thing that I've told a couple of days ago, I know this is really a last-minute thing, but with what we modified to the design, in addition to that, actually, the homeowner want to get rid of one of the window by the new kitchen area, the window right next to the peninsula. One day that can be approved together with this the consent item. That's all.
Okay, so right now the item as proposed is on the consent calendar, which means there's no public testimony or discussion of the item. Are you wanting the Planning and Zoning Commission to pull this off of the consent calendar so we can discuss that window change?
If that's the case, let me take my word back then. If that caused an additional step, then I will just keep the design as it is.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead and do that? Seeing it does not appear like there are any other public speakers right now. If that is the case, why don't we go ahead and close public comment? Commissioner Donaldson?
Yes, it sounds to me like if the applicant wishes to modify the project, maybe we should, maybe I'll pull it off the consent calendar and we can take care of that right now, make sure it doesn't come back to us later. How does that sound? Mm-hmm.
Sure, we can go ahead and
let's ask the applicant to come back again and explain what change is proposed right now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, everything is the same. There's a new window that we added. Actually, the window that added to this project, but the client just want to remove that from the proposed design. So that's all. Just a one single window on a ground level.
May I ask, is that window on the south side or on the back?
Yeah, it's on the south side.
Okay. And it's on the south side toward the back?
South side, right next to the new peninsula.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we already have a window by the dining area, and we already have a window by the kitchen area. So
okay.
The homeowner feel that window by the peninsula is not necessary.
All right, I think I understand. Yeah, I actually don't have the site plan in front of me, but I think I understand. Okay. Okay. Any other comments? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, with that then, we have remaining, I suppose, on the consent calendar. Maybe we can take if somebody would like to make a motion to continue the minutes and to perhaps recommend approval of 840 Masonic with the removal of the one window at the Kitchen Peninsula, we can move on this item.
Certainly, I'd be comfortable doing that. So I'll move that the consent calendar be treated as follows. The minutes should be continued to a date uncertain for some revisions, and the project at 840 Masonic Avenue could be approved. That's planning application 22009 with a modification by removing one of the kitchen windows.
Okay, great. Do we have a second on that motion? Commissioner McLeod, second it. With that, we'll go ahead and call the vote then. Commissioner Momin.
Yes.
Commissioner Pilch.
Yes.
Commissioner McLeod.
Yes.
Commissioner Donaldson.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So that motion passes 5-0, which will move us on to item 5 on our agenda, announcement and communications, of which there are none. Just double checking with staff, no additional announcements or communications. Great. We will go ahead and move on to item 6. This is general public comment. This is the moment for members of the public to address the Planning and Zoning Commission on an item that is not otherwise on today's agenda. So if you'd like to address the commission on an item not agendized this evening, please go ahead and raise your hand now. Staff, do we have any members of the public in the queue?
Yes, Chair Water, we have one member of the public. Jeremiah, please go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Bond. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Liz Waddy and Commission. I just have a few questions. What are we doing about vacant houses that have pretty much been abandoned? I know for a fact there's a couple on Marin. I know there's a couple on Adams. I was just wondering what we're going to do about all these vacant homes in Albany that just aren't being used, that are maybe caught in, wills, and the kids don't want to do anything, and it's just going to sit there and sit there. Also, what are we going to do with all the vacant land in Albany, if there is some? I know there's a couple, but maybe the vacant land could be used. There's that vacant land on Adams toward the old bowling alley. It's a couple lots. It's a fenced in. Anyway, there's a couple like that. I was just wondering what we're doing on these vacant land and vacant houses and how they could be possibly used for housing for educators. Our educators are basically minimum wage employees, and we should be focusing on, creating more housing for educators. And one way we could do that is, our $1,234 application fee, easy as 1, 2, 3, 4, for the ADU. Maybe, we could just eliminate that application fee. That way it'll give an opportunity. Sorry, let me turn my radio down. Maybe we can just get that ADU application fee waived. That'll create opportunity for landlords to open up some housing for educators. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak under general public comment right now? Seeing none, we will go ahead and close public comment and move along in our agenda to item 7. Item 7 is discussion and possible action items. We have a few this evening as well. So first up, we have item 7-1. This is the continuation of the work session initiated on January 12th regarding the 2023 to 2031 housing element site inventory. And with that, we will turn it over to staff.
Yes, thank you, Chair Waddy. Jeff Bond, the Community Development Director. I'll give a very brief introduction, and as you mentioned, the purpose of this agenda item is to continue a discussion that the commission held last month. And this is an opportunity for commissioners who weren't present in that discussion to share their perspectives with the rest of the commission. Just to briefly to give commission and members of the public an overview, the housing element is a state mandated planning process that will create a section of our housing element. Excuse me, I'll turn that off. Sorry about that. State mandated section of our general plan that will address the production of housing. We have a state mandate to plan for the potential of 1,114 homes at various income levels. And in particular, the discussion held in January and continued this evening is the site inventory aspect of the housing element, where we identify sites where that housing could potentially go. As I mentioned, this is a continuation of the discussion on January 12th. We're not planning to redo the presentation, but our consultant, Barry Miller, is here and is happy to help answer any questions and take direction from the commission as we proceed. We are working on other portions of the housing element. We'll be back in the next several months with many of the other aspects of the plan, and ultimately bringing you a draft plan, probably sometime early summer, that we'll then be reviewing with you, reviewing with the City Council, and then ultimately sending to the State Department of Housing and Community Development for their review later this fall. So I'll pause right there, and basically, hopefully the commission is prepared to dive right in, but if you'd like to ask any questions of Barry or myself, I'd be happy to answer those as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Commissioner Donaldson.
Yes, certainly. Thank you, and I'm glad to have this opportunity, actually. As you may remember, I attended that meeting on January 12th, 6 weeks ago or so, from a hotel room in Southern California where I was, and I lost Wi-Fi before the opportunity came for the commissioners to make comments, and then I got back into the meeting by phone, but I couldn't talk, or when I tried to talk, no one could hear me. So Christopher emailed me the next day and said, write down your comments. We'd like to get them in the record. And I did write them down, and right after the meeting that next morning. And so I'd like the opportunity to take this opportunity to relay what those comments were. I mean, it's kind of a lengthy list here. As you know, I can make a lot of comments sometimes, but I think it's probably important, and I'd like to I appreciate the opportunity to get them on the record. So based on from that meeting, I appreciated Barry's presentation very much. I thought that Appendix A and B were both really excellent. And I want to compliment Barry on how carefully he inventoried the possible sites. And I generally support his judgment regarding the development assumptions, which were realistic, not too high, not too low. I thought it was really good work. And the Appendix B, which is the one that Barry put together that assessed all of the proposed and approved developments along the San Pablo corridor in Berkeley, Albany, and El Cerrito, was really excellent. I really appreciate having that and all of the detailed information that he pulled together about each of those projects. So I thought that was really excellent. One of my overall thoughts in listening to the report and listening to Barry's report and reading what he had written is that I really thought that this report, as it's written, is really aimed at the HCD, the Housing and Community Development Agency in the state. I think that's a good approach. They're the ones who really have to approve the report, approve the housing element. It's really important that I want to compliment Barry on the clear graphics and the background information that was there, so that someone sitting in Sacramento who didn't know Albany very well would be able to look at the report and really understand what it's about. And I just thought that was really great. Having said that, I also would say that there are readers in Albany who are also an audience for this report. And I think it some revisions. I would like to see some modifications or sort of an equal focus on the report. Have it focused at HCD the way Barry does now, but also with some information in there that's really focused at the Albany readers, at the citizens we have. I went through the report and I saw a couple of corrections that I could have made at the time. And Barry, I think you're listening on page 31, 545 San Pablo, the Casper's hot dog site. You said it was vacant. It's really not vacant now. I think there's a small Chinese school in there. And the table tennis club has a new business currently called Cast Ceramics. And then on page 43, regarding the Mechanics Bank site, 805 San Pablo, I think your report said that the specific plan height limit there was 85 feet. And I think the specific plan, as I recall, that would have been in the 68-foot height limit. So a couple of little minor corrections there. Another general comment I wanted to make is that the report and the appendices say very little about density bonuses. I know that HCD is probably de-emphasizing density bonuses, but I think Albany readers are going to want to know about the density bonuses, and we're really seeing how that's playing out now with the recent application at 1600 Solano. So I do not think that the density bonus law can be ignored in this report, and that Albany readers need to be reminded of that. And it's true on both corridors, the Solano corridor and on the San Pablo corridor as well. I noted that evening that Clay Larson had called in and commented that the report should acknowledge the general plan land use element. I've said that before. I completely agree with Clay on that point. And I really think that the housing element needs to explain which of the general plan policies are not congruent with the, which of the housing element policies are not congruent with the general plan land use policies, and talk about why. We should not ignore the adopted general plan at all, even though this will be an element of it. And then finally, at the end of the staff report, you may recall there were 4 different questions staff had asked P&Z to chime in on. And one was comments on the San Pablo Avenue corridor sites. I don't think I need to say anything more on that. Let's see, question number 2, regarding other places. I personally think that the city should start the process to upzone the Albany Hill parcel soon. And I appreciate some comments that people had made. I think Elizabeth made the comment that might reserve those strategically to think about how how that might affect our overall development potential. But I think we need to be careful there. And I really want you to urge you to think more about that. And I really think that the city should take a look here soon at upzoning that parcel on the Albany Hill. And then another question regarding Solano, I think it was. I support raising the height limit along Solano. But I also made the comment 6 weeks ago, I'd like to understand better how density bonuses are going to affect Solano. And now we've really seen that with the proposal we saw 2 weeks ago, I think it was, or a month ago now, at 1600 Solano. So maybe that comment's no longer so relevant. But still, even other target sites on Solano, it probably would be useful for the Albany readers anyway to know how the density bonus law might affect some of those sites, as well as the project at 1600 Solano that's proposed. Okay. Finally, a last question was, are there other sites that need to be added to the inventory? probably not specific sites, but in a general way, the first thing I thought of are a couple of our big sites, Golden Gate Fields and the Gill track. They're not viable housing sites today, but they might be someday in the future. We don't know. Look at the pressure that the university has to build housing, and Golden Gate Fields, who knows about that? But both of those pieces of land, areas of land are very large, some of the largest we have. They're well located. They're definitely potential parts of our housing inventory at some time in the future. And I really don't think they should be completely ignored when we present our new housing element to the citizens of Albany and to HCD. So that was it. It's not it. It's not it. Finally, on January 12th, we had just found out that Ann Hirsch had left the city. And I wanted to say at that time, and I'll say it right now, that I think we should do something about that. I think the resolution coming out of the Planning Commission thanking Ann or complimenting her for her long service to the city and to us as commissioners would be very much in order. And she worked really hard to do a good job for Albany, and she did that in my mind. And I think we should acknowledge that and honor her in some way. So those are my comments that came out of that meeting. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Momin.
Thank you. Thank you, planning staff, for continuing this discussion from the last meeting. I was not able to attend the meeting, so I'm really glad that I'm getting this opportunity to offer my feedback. And thank you, Mr. Miller, for being available today. I really appreciate the efforts you have taken in preparing this study. You have put together a really comprehensive piece of study. It is very detailed, yet very concise. The opportunity sites analysis has all the necessary information, which is supported with data, assumptions, and clarifications. And the comparable sites document is extremely useful to know what is being developed on San Pablo Avenue in the neighboring cities and at what scale and intensity, and what could be the constraints and parking ratios and heights. It's really very useful document. And so thank you for doing all that very systematically. I'm really, I anticipated, but really relieved to see that our efforts on San Pablo Avenue specific plan, is helping us complying with this RENA requirement. Although the housing distribution is not very equitable across the city, I'm glad that we are at least able to comply with those numbers. And so before I provide my comments on those 4 points highlighted in the staff report, I would like to get a few things clarified by Mr. Miller. And so first thing is, I know we must identify sites for affordable housing, but is it possible or necessary to designate or incentivize any site for senior housing? In the last presentation on housing needs assessment, we observed that there was a big increase in the population of the age group from 65 to 74. Do you think that translates into a need for senior housing? And if it does, how would we address that in our housing element? Would that be only a part of policies and programs section, or would we actively look for sites and incentivize development of senior housing?
Thank you. Chair Waddy, shall I reply to questions now or wait till the end?
Feel free and jump in now. We can go ahead and have that conversation. And once commissioners are done, we'll go ahead and open it up for public comment.
Great. Thank you. And I also wanted to respond to some of Commissioner Donaldson's comments as well, but I'll wait till the end to do that. We certainly can include incentives for senior housing in the housing element and in the municipal code. I will say HCD does not like to see incentives for senior housing only, and so you know, as a form of affordable housing, we can state that it is a priority and something that we really want to see. It's not likely we're going to identify individual sites and say, this is the senior housing site at that level. Although, you know, we can say, well, this site is next to a community center or this site is next to a transit station. Therefore, it's better situated for senior housing as a policy matter, and make statements like that I think express a preference for senior housing in certain locations.
Thank you. And then my next question is about by right development for carryover sites. You mentioned in your report that some, like you mentioned, other local discretionary reviews would not be applicable for these sites, but design review in public meetings would be applicable. So can you clarify what is the difference between those other discretionary local reviews and the public hearing local review? And is that really significant? And are the property owners aware of that incentive if it is a significant incentive?
I do think it's a significant incentive, and the point I think that we're trying to make is you can't deny the project if it meets all the standards. You can shape the design of the project, but at the end of the day, you have to approve it as long as it complies with the development standards that are in your code. And so that's really the point of that, is to say you still have discretion over design, but if the project meets all of the development standards in your code, then it's essentially going to be approved.
Okay, and the owners are informed specifically about that, so they are aware of that incentive and they can then think about developing those sites in near future or something.
Yeah, the owners, we haven't done outreach to every owner I haven't done outreach to every owner on San Pablo Avenue, but that is part of the element. There'll be education and outreach to the property owners to do, to generate interest in redeveloping some of those properties in the future, letting them know that it is easier to do now than it may have been several years ago.
Okay, thank you. And then in your site inventory report, some of the sites are shown as partially counted in the previous cycle. So would they be benefiting from by right development incentive in this cycle?
Yeah, so I think the sites that were previously counted that would benefit are going to benefit anyway because they're on San Pablo Avenue. And so the new specific plan will have that by right development opportunity built into it. So in a way that it's already addressed by having that specific plan in place. So I believe that the sites that have been listed as carryover sites are all on San Pablo Avenue. There may be one or two that are on Solano, now that I think of it.
Some sites show that they were partially counted, and that was my question.
The partially counted sites would be sites where we've expanded the footprint of the site from last time to this. We've added adjacent parcels, for example, so they would still benefit from that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then next question is about zoning incentive for Solano sites. If the zoning incentive is provided, would that be provided only for the selected opportunity sites or for whole corridor?
It would be provided for all of the properties on Solano, but it might not be provided unless there is a certain affordability threshold that's met in those projects.
Okay, so that is the only requirement, but all other sites along the corridor would be provided the same incentive.
I believe that's the intent right now, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if we do not rezone them now, and if, as you mentioned in your presentation, if they are included as an action item to be studied, would we be able to count more than 133 units in our current submittal?
If we can rezone them in the next 3 years, we can count more than 133 units. Yeah, there's a 3-year time frame for the rezoning once we adopt the housing element.
Okay. And then My next question is related to a UC Village student housing development. I have two questions on that. One is regarding very low income housing requirement. Clearly, the income levels of the students in UC Village have had a huge impact on the income demographics of the city. They form a big chunk of low income families, and so I want to know if there is any connection between the very low income housing numbers assigned to the city and the higher percentage of low income population that is mainly students from the UC Village.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. And so the ABAG methodology for distributing the units and assigning the income categories is based on the number of households in the city in each of the income categories in part. So the fact that there are low and very low income people at UC Village would play into, it would be accounted for, but the effect would be that we would get a greater assignment of moderate and above moderate income because the whole model is set to equalize income distributions across communities and avoid concentrations. So if a community appears to have a higher concentration of lower income, it's going to get a higher assignment of moderate and above moderate income, the way their distribution model works.
So with that, would we be able to influence, HCD in accepting our arena numbers that can count some of the units in the new development? Or
yeah, we're trying, and Jeff, you may want to add on to this. We are not that optimistic based on what they've told us so far and what other cities in Southern California that have already gone through this process are telling us. We had a meeting with Irvine a couple of months ago who have already gone through their housing element with HCD, who indicated that they also attempted to count student apartments, and they're not dormitories, they're individual living units with kitchens and bathrooms, but the state did not allow them to count those units toward the RENA.
Okay, and do we know how many studios are there in the UC Village project, and if we can at least consider studios as full units and count them towards RENA?
We do know that the number of studios, and we will try.
Okay. Okay, so thank you so much for all your clarifications. I will come to the comments on those 4 items. The first one, I don't really have any specific comments on the sites that you have selected. They're all very comprehensive, and you have not done all the due diligence on that. Most of them are carryover sites, and additional sites look reasonable to me. Regarding Albany Hill parcel, I would support rezoning of that site if we can get it approved up to 20 dwelling units per acre. I don't think if it is less than that, that would really make a huge impact. The site itself is really difficult to develop, and with just 90 or so more units, I'm not sure if going through ballot measure and is all that worth the efforts. But I would support if it is higher density, and I think we should try for higher density. The lower portion of the site could surely, allow for a taller building that could go along the development pattern on that front of the Pierce Street, and then the rest of the site could be open space. But it would be done with higher density limit. I'm not really sure about the clustering and if that is kind of really a requirement, and if we allow taller buildings along Pierce Avenue, would we be able to comply with that clustering requirement? And then coming to Solano Avenue, if the rezoning is to be done for the whole corridor, I think it should be done very comprehensively. There should be, if not a specific plan, there should be a detailed zoning analysis to be done that should look at all the development scenarios more holistically. and it should include parking, traffic, and infrastructure impact. But I really think it may not be necessary. And as Commissioner Donaldson mentioned, we discussed this proposal on 1600 Solano last month. The owner used density bonus and proposed 15 feet of additional height, 50% more density, less than 50% open space, and zero setback, and almost zero parking. And all developments in Albany, which are larger than 5 units, have to provide inclusionary housing. And so people would take advantage of that inclusionary housing as a for density bonus, and they would go for this kind of development. So I think if we provide more additional height incentive, it would create some really awkward projects on Solano Avenue. And I think Solana Avenue is not a regional corridor like San Pablo Avenue. It has its own character, and I think we must treat it carefully. And I understand reasoning would be helpful in distributing the housing more equitably across the city. And without rezoning on Solano Avenue, we will be able to include only the base zoning development capacity in our RENA commitment. But I don't think the additional 100 units are worth the efforts and the consequences on the character of the Solano Avenue. And also, I remember you mentioned somewhere in the same report, there could be some relaxation for the ground level use. I think we should treat that on case by case basis. Solana Avenue is our main street. The ground floors along that street must be active, and so I would not allow any blanket waiver for ground floor use requirements on that. And then the last item, I don't think I have any site in mind that could be added to the inventory that you have prepared already. So that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for all this work.
Thank you, Commissioner Momin. Are there any other comments from commissioners on this item before we open it up for public comment? All right. Seeing none, and I will just note before we open it for public comment, I have nothing additional to add. I think I put all of my comments into the record when we heard this item before. So for the sake of time, I will not reiterate my previous comments. Great, then with that, why don't we go ahead and open up public comment on this item. So now is the moment for folks out there. If you'd like to comment on this item, please go ahead and raise your hand, and Jeff will call each speaker.
Thank you, Chair Waddy. We have 2 hands raised so far. Brian Martin, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Brian Martin, resident of Albany. I wanted to thank the Commission for looking into all this and discussing these things. A few comments about the plan. One is that I'm definitely in favor of the expanded San Pablo Avenue plus Solano Avenue plus Albany Hill plus UC Village, although I think there might be updates on UC Village, whether or not we can apply those units to our allotment, but definitely spread things around. I see on the site inventory, the report says although the city can meet its quota without zoning changes along Solano Avenue, the increased height limit should be considered as an equity measure to more evenly balance housing opportunities across the city. And I agree with that. I think that's important. The California Department of Housing and Community Development affirmatively further fair housing guidance for all public entities and for housing elements says that AB 686, I'm concerned there isn't much mention of AB 686 in the documents. I wanted to find out if where there are mentions of AB 686, it now requires the jurisdiction identify sites throughout the community in a matter that is consistent with its duty to affirmatively further fair housing. And so that is a concern that I would like to hear where AB 686 is addressed and equity is addressed in the submission. For 1600 Solano, that one still isn't in the site inventory, but yet, as we all know, that was one that people are or want to build something substantial there. So I'm concerned that the site inventory doesn't really just focuses mostly on San Pablo and doesn't include all these places that are similar to 1600 Solano that could that looks like it's penciling out for people to develop, and would even more could be developed with increased heights. I wanted to raise a concern about one commissioner mentioned having impact studies on Solano Avenue for parking and traffic with zoning changes. I haven't heard anything like that mentioned for San Pablo Avenue. And so that seems like a very concerning equity situation where only Solano Avenue gets that sort of treatment. So I would want the justification for that made clear, why San Pablo Avenue wouldn't have that. And those are my main issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Jeremiah Pinguelo. Please go ahead, Jeremiah.
Yeah, thank you. I was just hoping that I'm just kind of focus on the ADUs, the accessory dwelling unit. I hope that does count toward the housing requirements by the state. You could stop me if it doesn't count, but you know, I think these accessory dwelling units are kind of possibly overlooked because potentially almost every resident can have an ADU. And maybe we can also get a survey on which properties in Albany could potentially have an ADU, because some of them might just straight up, they just don't have the room. But I think the ADUs could be used for great things, maybe even specifics like educator housing or senior citizen housing or low income housing. And then not just low income, but very low income and extremely low income. Those are also categories that are not so transparent. I don't know how far down income it goes, but I've heard we talk about low income, but then there's something even below that, like extremely low income, very low income, not just low income. So I don't know. I see the side that the city also needs to make money with the application fee for the ADUs, the $1,234 or whatever it is. And I understand the city does need to make money somehow, but if there could be a compromise to where the city wasn't trying to just make $1,000 and see the bigger picture, that potentially wiping off that ADU fee for the application could potentially lead to meeting the state requirements for housing units, affordable, and educator housing.
Okay, are you all finished, Jeremiah?
Yes, thank you. I'm not. I just wanted to add one thing, that a lot of the teachers drive from other cities, whether it be Antioch, Pittsburgh, but a lot of educators drive from other areas to come to Albany to educate. And I think it would be kind of nice if they got to live here because they'd be more involved in the community on an everyday basis. Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Jeff.
Okay, next public speaker is Robert Chasty. Robert, please go ahead.
Am I unmuted yet?
You're good to go.
Thank you. I just have a question for the Planning and Zoning Commission. If the current proposal at 1600 Solano allows for a building to be set at 50 feet, well, I think it's 49 is the foot level. And then it allows for elevator shaft construction above that for another 10 or so feet, as well as an entertainment deck above. Is it the city's intention to have something taller than that? So how high does the city want to go with regard to these 5,000 square foot lots? The 1,600 is one of the 5,000 square foot lots. There are many on Solano. And if you're creating 12 new units in a site like that, if there are maybe 50 to 100 sites along Solano that could qualify for that, you have very little in the way of side yard setbacks that have been proposed for that unit, almost none, and none front and back. So almost the entire site of that particular application, the footprint is almost the 5,000 square feet. So you get about 20,000 square feet of building in a structure that size, maybe more. And is it the city's intention to go beyond that? So if the city raises the height limit on Solano, and then you get applicants who are applying under the state exemptions with 20% of the project being low income, you get to you get to, I think, 50% above what you normally would be able to apply for. So, and that's what happened at 1,600. You're liable to have 100 of these. What is the housing requirement target that we're trying to reach? And are we really trying to turn Solano into a street that would have roughly 4 and 5 story buildings that comprise almost the entire 5,000 square foot lot? And I just want to hear that discussion happen before we pell-mell our way into doing this by approving applications one by one, because all of the landowners should know what the rules are, and the surrounding community should know if that's the direction we want to go in. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands raised at this time, Joey.
Great, thank you. With that, then we will go ahead and close public comment and turn it back to the commission. If there are no other final comments, this was just an informational item, not an action item. Oh, looks like there is one more hand. Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Pilch.
I think you're muted.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Commissioner.
The old double mute. Thank you. So the looks like the consultant, Mr. Miller, wants to speak as well. But as briefly as possible, I wanted to say a few things about some of the things that I heard. First of all, I wanted to understand one comment made by Commissioner Moman about the ground level retail on Solano. I didn't quite catch that. If you could just reiterate that comment, if I caught that correctly.
You asking me, Commissioner Page?
Yes.
Yeah, so I read in the report that there could be a waiver for ground floor use on Solana Avenue to incentivize development. And I thought that Solana Avenue is a main street, which mostly relies on retail use on ground level. That's its, character. And I'm wondering, like, when we say waiver for ground level use, are we going to allow residential development on ground floor? And that might not be the best land use for ground floor on Solano. Solano is a retail street, and that should be a retail street.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, I think I would agree with that. The devil might be in the details there, where we, maybe some work live. It can be appropriate, just like on San Pablo, but in general agreement with that. And just about Solano in general, I think there is a lot of room for more density and greater heights on Solano, while keeping the same while keeping Solano the same, keeping it same feel on Solano. It's just a lot of one-story buildings, a lot of underutilized land. So I think we have plenty of room to grow there, and while keeping a small town atmosphere as well. And let me get back to that, because it's a question for Mr. Miller I have on Solano. And then in terms of upzoning Albany Hill. Yeah, I think it sounds like we're all agreed on that. And I think the council is agreed on that too, but just for the benefit of the other commissioners who might not have heard that, the plan is that the housing element will include, upzoning will require an EIR. And so the housing element will include an EIR for that upzoning, which will allow the council to put something on the ballot to actually do the upzoning at a later time, which will be the 2024 election, and because there's not enough time to do it now for this election. So that's my understanding about that. And I think that's it. But back to Solano, maybe Mr. Miller could address this. So I do see that, there was a good question about 1600 Solano not being in the site inventory. And Solano originally was apparently a residential zoning, or it was planned for residential. And that's why you see single family homes, what looked like single family homes scattered along Solana Avenue. Many of which have been turned into, or most all of which have been turned into businesses now. But should we? I guess my questions would be: should we include 1600 Solano in the inventory? Should we include those single-family homes in the inventory? And are there other opportunities on Solano to put in the inventory? Mr. Miller. That's it.
Sure. Thanks. Happy to answer that question. It's really up to you, but I'll tell you the reason that it wasn't included is that it didn't meet the metrics that we established for housing opportunity sites. So it is an interesting lesson about how you use those metrics. It's less than 10,000 square feet. It's got a high improvement value relative to the land value, and it's not contiguous with another property owned by the same owner or with parking. So we were looking at sites like Safeway and the CVS because they have big parking lots, or the Bank of America because it has a big parking lot, or because the value of what's on there is low, or because it's mostly vacant. That site didn't meet those criteria, and yet it's still coming forward as a potential housing site. So we would probably include it at the end of the day, simply because the owner is interested in developing it, and that is also one of our criteria. So if they feel that it warrants inclusion, we can do that, but I don't think we would then count every other single-family house on the avenue as a housing site. We would be hard-pressed to make the case to the state that those were all viable sites, given the and they're occupied and they built to develop economic base. So it's a little bit of a balancing act.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
If I may jump in with respect to the environmental review, if ultimately the commission includes the the Pierce Street property on the west side of Albany Hill, and there is a recommendation for rezoning that to a higher density, that would be part of the environmental review that we'll do on this housing element. We have not, however, reached any conclusions regarding the need for an environmental impact report to address that. It does require environmental review, but that's the type of review is yet to be determined. So we'll keep you posted with that work as we progress during the summer.
And if I may respond to a couple of the comments that came up earlier, if that's all right. A couple of the public comments and also Commissioner Donaldson. Just a reminder that what we're looking at is the opportunity sites inventory, which is only one part of the housing element. And this is actually a multi-chapter document that includes a whole chapter on affirmatively furthering fair housing to meet the AB 686 requirements. I'm actually doing that analysis now. It's about 70 pages of tables and maps and detailed information on that very subject. There's also an evaluation of the density bonus impacts and the constraints analysis. So we're doing a detailed inventory of all of the regulations that affect housing in Albany to identify which are potentially constraints or opportunities. And so that deep dive into the density bonus is included there. And I totally get that if you're looking at these in individual silos, the connections aren't really obvious. But when we get to the housing element, that will be that'll be evident. I also wanted to say, to Jeremiah's point, we are counting ADUs. We actually have guidance from ABAG on how we can assign the ADUs to each individual income category now. So that helps us because it actually gets us some low and very low income units that are spread out in the community and not concentrated in one location. I think that was it. I just wanted to make those couple of clarifications. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Commissioner McLeod.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again for the presentation. It's all like others have said, it's been a very good document and well supported, and I do appreciate all the effort that Mr. Miller's put into it. I just want to say a few brief things. I did comment on this last time we heard this. You know, I do support upzoning the Pierce Street parcel. I think that was abundantly clear when we had that one project that came before us, that it would be much, much better to upzone it, concentrate development at the lower part of the hill, kind of contiguous with the other higher development areas along Pierce Street, and try to preserve more of the upper hillside as open space. You know, that would be a laudable goal and well worth doing. A few other things, just briefly, just regarding Solano Avenue, I do support upzoning. You know, what makes good urban space? I think 4 stories average along Solano would be fine. It's a wide enough boulevard. It can certainly support taller buildings along its street front. I would support more commercial active uses along the bottom floor for the entirety of its development. You know, it also makes for better, more vibrant urban space, similar to what we're looking at San Pablo Avenue. So I do support that as well. You know, and it kind of also goes back to Mr. Martin's comment about equity and upzoning and spreading development throughout the city. And I think that's, his remarks are well taken. And I think we really should be implementing other higher zoning standards across the city. And we could look at perhaps the Brighton Avenue corridor being very close to Barton shopping as another good option, good opportunity. So I do appreciate Mr. Martin's comments, and that's it for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McLeod. Are there any other comments from commissioners on this item? All right. Seeing none, then this was again an informational item, so there is no action on this item this evening. So we will close this item and move on to the next item on our agenda, which is item 7-2. This is planning application 22-007, design review for a new 2-story home at 1014 Santa Fe Avenue. And with that, I'll turn it over to staff for a presentation.
Great, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Once again, this is design review for a new 2-story home at 1014 Santa Fe Avenue. I'll do a brief presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions at the end. The subject property is a 4,960 square foot lot with a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 972 square foot house built in 1928. City records show minor work done to the property in its past. Notably, the garage at the back of the property was built in 1949. Here's a street view of the property as it sits today. And project requests. The applicant is seeking design review approval from the commission for a new 2-story contemporary home. The project scope includes demolishing the existing home on site and ground up construction for a new home. On the main level, the applicant is proposing a 1,357 square foot main level to accommodate a mudroom, half bath, and ensuite, living, kitchen, pantry, and dining spaces. The applicant is proposing a 1,380 square foot second story for the home, which would accommodate the master suite, 2 bedrooms, 1 laundry room, a bathroom, an office, and a roof deck located towards the front of the home. Altogether, the project scope would result in a 4-bedroom, 3.5 bathroom, 2,737 square foot home with a maximum height of 26 feet and 10 inches. Here's a proposed front elevation of the proposed home. And then here's some 3D renderings provided by the applicant. Here's another view from the right side of the house. And then at the rear, you'll notice the second story cantilevers over the first story at the rear of the home. Exceptional design. Projects which exceed a 0.45 FAR are subject to exceptional design as reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Some of these exceptional design treatments include a standing metal seam roof, a combination of horizontal wood paneling and painted stucco siding, anodized aluminum windows, doors, trim, and downspouts throughout the exterior of the home, a wood deck with metal guardrails toward the front of the home on the second story, and on that deck, a decorative wood trellis that follows the roof line of the front facade. The applicant has also provided a landscape plan which illustrates new wood fencing and gates, a concrete driveway, and built-in planters and pavers throughout the site. Parking. There's an existing two-car garage, as I mentioned, located at the rear of the home. The applicant is proposing to demolish approximately half of the garage to establish a single-car garage. One off-street parking space is proposed in that garage and then also in the driveway in a tandem configuration. This would result in a total of 2 off-street parking spaces for the home, which is compliant with the zoning code requirements for single-family homes in Albany. Staff has not received any correspondences in regard to this project proposal. The project is categorically exempt per section 15303 of CEQA, and staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission review and approve the proposed project subject to the findings and conditions of approval. And with that, that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for staff before we open it up for the project sponsor to give the presentation? I'm sorry, I'm having trouble seeing hands at the moment. So if anyone has their hand up, feel free. Okay, don't think I see any. Oh, Commissioner Momin, go ahead.
Yeah, I just a quick question. Since this is a large house with 0.45%, 0.45 FAR, the proposal would require a landscape plan. There is not a landscape plan submitted specifically. There is a plan called improvement site plan. Is that accepted as a landscape plan?
I believe there was a sheet called out as landscape plan, albeit it does have not too many details called out compared to some of the other landscape plans we've had.
Yeah, it's A0.2. It has some, a legend that says landscape plan schedule. And just like very few, details in that. I just wanted to know if it is accepted as that.
Let's see. I'm looking at a planting plan that was included as after page sheet 813. There's a landscape plan with color renderings and plant details. It's in a different format. It's not the 24 by 36 usual format for architectural plans, but 8.5 by 11. And so that, I mean, it has been accepted at the landscape plan, yeah.
You say A13?
It's after A13.
I'm not seeing. Was this document with the plans? Were different plans included at different times during the agenda process? Because I'm not seeing anything after A 6.0.
Yeah, I believe it was updated once, but shortly after the packet went out. So I'm not sure if it's the one that I'm pulling up on the website right now.
Okay, I'll have to go back to the agenda and see if I can find it. But I think it was Monday that I downloaded the documents.
One moment.
Yeah, I similarly don't see an 813 on the set that I accessed online.
Oh, that's,
Chris, could you share your screen maybe for what you're looking at in terms of the landscape plan?
yeah, one. It's weird. It's showing up on the version I'm looking at, but not on. Okay, one moment. There might be a technical error with it.
Is it? Could I ask? Is it sheet AO.2?
No, it should be after.
That looks like a landscape plan to me.
Let me see if I can. Let's see. One moment.
I think our packets are missing some sheets.
Yeah, I can share my screen. Yeah, there might have been some error in the uploading process. Let's see. So this is the version I'm looking. Oh, it's not loading, of course, now. My computer may be having some trouble because I'm operating a lot of stuff at the moment. So it's not loading it right now, but I have it on my iPad.
Well, Chris, maybe while that is loading, why don't we see if there are any other questions? We'll sort of put a pin in the landscape plan question. Commissioner Momin, did you have any other questions for staff outside of building? Okay.
No, thanks.
Do any other commissioners have any questions for staff? Otherwise, we can turn it over to the project applicant. Okay, oh, Commissioner McLeod, did you have a question? And you're on mute.
Do we have rules on how much pervious paving there is? Because it seems like there's a lot. I just was wondering if that's something we should be looking at.
I can jump in and answer that question. This would be subject to the green building, the recently adopted green building standards. And I'm not remembering exactly what they were off the top of my head, but it would be subject to those recently adopted standards. And that would be part of our building permit review.
Okay, all right.
All right, with that, why don't we go ahead and turn it over to the project applicant if the project applicant is on the line and would like to give us a brief presentation.
Project architect, Layla, if you're in the audience, if you could raise your hand, I can let you. Okay, one moment. Okay, Layla, go ahead, speak.
Hello, everybody. Actually, Brad Gunkel, my supervisor, he's in here and he's going to present this project. Can you please call him?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for your time. Good evening, Chair Wadi and commissioners. Will I be able to share my screen?
I'm not sure if attendees have that authority. Is there an option for you, Brad, to do so?
Not right now.
Okay.
Usually I'm able to.
Chris, I'll bring him up as a panelist.
Okay.
Hello. Sorry. Sorry to crash your party here. Let's see. So yeah, I just like to share my screen. We did actually do kind of a more updated rendering as well. So I want to make sure we could show that to you as well. Can you see this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So yes, Conrad and his family purchased this property with the intention of building their family home here. They've lived in Albany in the past and want to move back to Albany. The current property includes an existing house, which is in pretty bad shape, actually very bad shape. And then the large garage at the rear, the roof is in poor shape, but the CMU wall that forms the perimeter of the garage is actually in good shape. So over here you can see the house on the right is the existing house. I think we had someone speak before about abandoned or houses in Albany that are underutilized, and so this is definitely one of those. So we've worked with Conrad and his family to kind of come up with a site, a design for the property that, one, tries to respect the privacy of the neighbors. So he's been working with the neighbors on the design. Initially, there were some rear decks and things along those lines, and those have been since removed to protect the privacy of the adjacent neighbors. Also, the slopes of the roof, you'll see, are the slopes run to the north and south to really kind of maximize solar access for the property that is for the neighbor that's to the north. You can see that we're maintaining a nice large backyard. We're maintaining half of the existing garage perimeter and filling that in, and the ground floors, basically it's primarily living space with one guest bedroom frankly, for aging parents visiting, etc. And they also really wanted to make sure they had a covered area in the back, and so that's part of the reason that we did the cantilever in the back. The second floor you can see includes a master bedroom suite, 2 smaller bedrooms, kids' bedrooms, and then an office in the front. And we really wanted to, obviously take to heart the need for kind of higher design quality. We understand that we are under the allowed floor area ratio, but we are above that floor area ratio requirement for high quality design. And so, we took a look at the houses along, in the neighborhood. There's a combination of styles, materials, etc. So it's very eclectic, but we really wanted to kind of capture the best of that. And so we're actually using integral color plaster stucco so 2 different colors of that, and then natural wood. Most likely it'll be like a Western red cedar, and then the trellis, which is in all likelihood going to be something more akin to Ipe. The windows and fascia, flashing, downspouts, etc., are all clear anodized aluminum, and the rails are stainless steel cable rails. So we really just wanted to, create a nice, light feeling, warm, contemporary house here for Conrad and his family. And that said, I open it up to any questions that you have.
Great. Thank you very much for that. I did have a quick question for you just in response to the presentation you had. You said all the windows are aluminum. The window schedule on the last page shows that there are a handful of windows that are vinyl, including some that are pretty, on the side, but towards the front of the building. And I was just wondering if that was an oversight or an error, or if that was...
That is wrong.
Okay.
I think our window schedule was requested of us after initial submittal, and I believe maybe that was put together in haste, and so that is not the case.
Okay, so all of the windows, just sort of clarify in the motion that we'll take, will sort of make that edit into the record that all of these windows would be anodized aluminum.
Exactly. Yes.
With at least that 2-inch reveal. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you. Any other questions for the architect while we have him? Actually, while we have you on, since there was the question and you have screen sharing capabilities here, maybe you could address the landscaping question that was raised by Commissioner Momin.
I wish I could. Go
I'm
ahead.
just going to jump in really quick. Sorry, that was a mistake on my part. I was looking at the plan set for the previous project that was approved, 840 Masonic, and so that project was required to have a revised landscape plan, and that's what I was looking at. So the landscape plan that you saw, or the site plan, is the only landscaping plan that was seen by everyone for this project.
Yes, I was wondering if somebody slipped something that we did not have, but no. So I mean, the landscaping work. I mean, I can share again. It's I think, and what I have here is a simplified version, so it's not specifically identifying the planting, but I believe the version that you have does identify the planting. So I think the rear yard is primarily a wildflower mix, maintaining existing trees, and then the front yard, the shrubs along the front. I don't remember what they are, but I believe that's noted in the plan that you have. I think there's a small, possibly a small turf area here, and then the concrete path. This is grass pave, so this will basically appear as grass. And then this area over here is, I believe this is actually turf. And I don't know why this is showing as a pattern, but I think it's actually meant to look like this.
Okay, thank you. I didn't see in my packet any more detailed landscaping than what you just shown, or what you just showed. But thank you for sort of walking us through that. Are there, Commissioner McLeod, you have your hand raised. Did you have any follow-up questions?
Yeah, I was just curious why grass pave in the front yard. It's typically something we would see on or I would see on a driveway. And then also, I mean, to kind of go along with that, I mean, you have a very long concrete driveway, and for various environmental reasons, we're trying to discourage a lot of use of concrete. So why wouldn't you do grass pave on your driveway, which would make more sense to me in terms of permeability and, you know, less greenhouse gas production of Portland cement and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, what we find grass pave, if it's utilized on a regular driving surface, it just ends up being, you know, it ends up dying, and you end up back down to the grid. And so we haven't found it to work very well on driveways, but for kind of supplementary parking for a guest, it seems like, you know, a nice alternative because it's primarily going to look like landscaping.
So, I mean, are you saying you'd want that? That's going to be a parking space? It's not
intended to be a regular parking space, but if it's intended to be a guest, you know, if a guest comes by, it's an extra spot for them to park or pull a car over to allow the tandem car to drive through.
Well, I don't really think the city, we allow parking spaces that are in front yards like that. So I think that's something to consider. I guess I would encourage you to use some kind of permeable paving along the driveway, and not concrete, and was hoping you'd be amenable to something like that. It could be, you know, those grass paved rings can be effective with other things besides grass, with gravel or, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, I think
gravel or something, or or there are permeable pavers, I think, that actually look a lot better than concrete.
Absolutely. I think, you know, we're amenable to a condition along those lines.
And then I guess my couple other thoughts, kind of along the lines of sustainability, is one that your roof looks great. The south-facing slope looks perfect for solar panels. So is that something you're planning?
Well, it's something that will be required. So we will definitely have solar.
Yeah. Okay. That's perfect service for that. And then my last question is, are you going to do all electric construction? That's also part of our climate action.
I believe we are. I know we've had some conversations with our client, and he's even brought in a sustainability consultant. So my guess is we're going all electric on this project.
Okay, yeah, that would be great, and I would really encourage that. So, okay, that's it for right now. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Are there any other questions of either staff or the project architect before we open it up? Okay, seeing none, then we will go ahead and open up public comment at this time. So to members of the public, now is your opportunity to get in the queue and provide your public testimony if you'd like to speak on this item. So please go ahead and raise your hand if you'd like to speak on this item.
Wadi, so far we have 2 hands raised. Jeremiah, please go ahead.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Chair Liz Wadi and commissioners. Well, I'm just going to state the obvious. You know, Marin School's got a lot of construction going on. There's a lot of construction going on right there. You know, you want to do construction, I just imagine all these construction vehicles, a lot of traffic. You know, we're going to need extra police enforcement, you know, to take care of the area. You know, double fines in construction zones, double fines in school zones. Well, we don't have those yet, but the building looks really cool. I got to say that. I don't know why you want to put a balcony on the front of your house. I would put the balcony in the backyard, facing my backyard. I just don't know how many barbecues you plan on having facing the street. But yeah, it looks really cool. I got to get your software program. That looks fun. I noticed you got a few rain gutters on the north side. I was wondering what you're doing with your rainwater. Are you possibly collecting the rainwater and using it to water your garden or your 2 trees in the backyard or to flush the toilet? I don't know. But I was just wondering where that rainwater is going to go. Is it going to flood into the neighbor's yard? I was just wondering where all that water is going to go on the north side with those rain gutters. It just kind of looks like it goes straight to the neighbor's driveway. Also, what are you going to do for the noise and the dust to protect the neighbor on the south side? Really close quarters. You know, and how long is this project going to take? When is your start date and when is your end date goal? Because we have a school right there, and you know, I don't want all this noise going on when school's in session. So if you want to build this, please build it during the summertime. You got 3 months, because we can't have all this construction going on when school's in session. It's just not fair to the children who are trying to learn when a jackhammer and all this noise is going on across the street, just because somebody wants to, you know, just please consider the community, please consider the timing. Please consider that maybe the garage in the back, I don't know, try to create some space for an ADU potentially. You know, it's a big house, but try to create an opportunity for an ADU. The driveway's long. You could park 2 cars there. I don't know. Does Albany have a rule for a 2-car garage? I don't know. Probably not. But yeah, just please consider all the things I mentioned. It looks like a really nice house. I think you did a great job, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. Next speaker is Donald Carey. Donald, please go ahead. Donald, you may need to unmute.
You're correct. Do you hear me now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, I'll try to be quick. I know you guys, like me, want to go to bed soon. The only concerns I have is that when I've seen parking in the back of houses, it, especially down, looks like 80 feet of narrow driveway. It looks like, it was hard for me to read, but it looked like it was only 8.5 feet wide for that driveway, which means that actually parking in that long runway to the back isn't possible because they can't open the doors to their cars. So that looks like potential parking, but it really isn't. So anyone that drops into their home there is either going to have to drive all the way back or drive on the street, or, as has already been indicated, park on the lawn. So that would be my concern, that it just doesn't offer enough parking. I can understand the presentation that it's a small family and not a lot of cars, but it's also been my experience in that 10 years down the line, 20 years, then what happens is it's leased out and the renters are multiple, and now you have 5 cars in a house that size because that house can easily supply that many bedrooms. That's all I have to say, and thank you. I'll try to turn this off. Okay, there.
Thank you. I see no other public speakers at this time.
Great, thank you. With that, we'll go ahead and close public comment and turn it back to the commissioners for deliberations. Do any commissioners want to kick things off? If not, I'm happy to. Oh, all right, we've got some hands up. We'll start with Commissioner Felch. Go ahead.
Sure, I don't have a lot to say. I heard that the architects and the owners worked a lot with the neighbors on details, and that's great. That's to be applauded. Thank you very much for that. And I would second the remarks from Commissioner McLeod about permeable pavement and going all electric. Otherwise, I like the design. I think it's a complete design. I think it's consistent, and I'm in favor of the project. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Pilch. Commissioner Moman, go ahead.
Thank you. I too like the project. It will be a big improvement to the street frontage that would replace the dilapidated old house. I like the simplicity of the design. It has a simple form with masses that slide front and back, and the pitched roof with clear story make those simple forms more attractive. The natural wood siding and the standing seam roof would give the house a nice rich look. I like that. And I like the contemporary expression of the trellis, and with its coplanarity with the roof, I think makes a nice, beautiful design feature. I just have a couple of suggestions, not conditions for approval, but just my personal opinion. I think applying wood siding on the first floor on all sides would have been better than applying that partially on ground floor and partially on second floor. It kind of looks kind of staggered. Applying that on just one level would kind of create a nice base with a top in stucco, but it's up to the designers and the owners. And I would also suggest exploring a darker shade for anodized aluminum, along with clear anodized aluminum for door frames and windows. It goes well with the wood color and wood texture. And I would support Commissioner McLeod's suggestion for all electric and solar panel and permeable paving. Overall, it is a decent project, and I support it.
Commissioner Donaldson?
Sure. Yes, thank you. I like the project very much. I think it's a very interesting design. And it's not often we see someone get to start over completely with sort of a blank site. And I think you've done a really nice job here. My initial concerns when I looked over everything were the landscape plan. I did think it was kind of sparse. Of course, with a very contemporary design like this, a very simple design, maybe that's okay. But I think it's okay. I'm a little bit worried about having the wildflower mix in that big backyard, and that may not work for you so well over time, but that is something you'd have to work out as you go along. Other comments, I would have a concern about using the part of the front yard as a possible overflow parking. We really don't allow that in Albany, and it shouldn't be used that way or designed that way. That being said, I was not bothered by having that kind of permeable surface with hard surface and grass mixed as adding a variety, two sections to your front yard. But I certainly wouldn't like it to be a car park area. I appreciate your comment about having the concrete driveway. I do think they're clearly serviceable and very durable, and having permeable driveways. I have seen them around town where they haven't worked too well. Paving systems are great. I understand they're very expensive. That if you want to address Commissioner McLeod's comments about the concern about permeable surfaces, I hope you would go that way. I think they're more permeable, but I don't have a problem with the concrete driveway. And that's really about it. I agree that the porch in the front is unusual. I looked at it sort of twice, and then I thought, well, it looks fine. I can live with that. And maybe we need more of those in Albany, where we have more people out front greeting their neighbors as they go by. So it's I think about that in my own house, and I kind of wish sometimes I did have a front porch. So I think it's a really nice design, and you've done a great job, and good luck with the project going forward. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Commissioner Donaldson. Commissioner McLeod, did you have another comment?
Yeah, I just want to say overall, I support the project. I like the more modern, contemporary design. Floor plan looks great. I do question the grass pave in the front. I don't think it's appropriate to park cars there. And then I would really strongly would like to see permeable paving of some kind along the driveway instead of concrete. The current driveway has the 2 tire strips, which actually does, in effect, allow a lot more water to seep into the water table. So you're replacing 2 narrow concrete tire strips with a full concrete driveway, and I think that's going in the wrong direction. I think either maintain those tire strips or use permeable paving. And then, on most other projects like this, we've required a much more thorough, detailed planting plan. So I don't think it would be consistent of us to not do that in this situation. Granted, it is maybe perhaps a more minimalist design like Commissioner Donaldson has suggested, but I think we should require that a more specific planting plan be done, whether it's by the architect or by a landscape architect, but just something, and have staff review that as part of their final submission. The only other thing is the comment about the driveway. The driveway is 9 feet wide. I think that's plenty wide for cars to get through and even get in and out of the car. It's okay. It will work. Yeah, that's about it. And just regarding the comments, public comment about noise, it's governed by just standard building department regulations for noise during the day, and I'm sure it's not going to be a problem for the school to build whenever. It will be fine. So that's it. So I support the project. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Commissioner McLeod. I'll just jump in and share my final thoughts. Very similar comments to those of my fellow commissioners. Overall, I think the architecture is well done. To me, there's always a slightly higher bar when you're doing an outright new construction, especially when the existing home, although it is clearly in very rough shape, it certainly has sort of that old Albany charm, sort of the good bones, if you will. And so there's a little bit of architectural value there, even if in rough shape. So I think the architect has done a good job bringing a high quality architectural design to replace it, rather than, a generic box of sorts that we've sometimes struggled with from time to time. So I think this is a really thoughtful replacement project. It's contemporary, it's of its time, but it's also, I think, using soft materials that are also compatible and found throughout the neighborhood. So I think it's striking that fine balance there. I would be supportive of the project with the following conditions. Again, the update and clarification of the window materials, inclusion of a proper landscape plan, and I'm fine with that just being to be submitted to staff at a later time. And as part of that landscape plan, having the driveway be permeable in nature, leave it up to them, whether that's permeable with, gravel type systems or a planting system. I'll sort of leave it flexible, but ask for a permeable type driveway system as part of that overall landscape plan. But with those three conditions, I'd be supportive of moving forward the project. If there are any commissioners open to making a motion along those lines. Commissioner Pulch?
I so move support with those conditions.
Wonderful. Do we have a second?
I will second.
Great. Commissioner McLeod for the second. And then on that motion, Commissioner Momin.
Yes.
Commissioner Donaldson.
Yes.
Great. Commissioner McLeod.
Yes.
Commissioner Pilch.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So that motion passes 5-0. And I believe you also have story polls up. Staff, correct me if I'm wrong. No story polls on this one?
No story polls since this is new construction ground up.
Got it. Okay. Can't keep that straight. But there still is the 14-day appeal period. So for the sponsor to just be aware of that. And with that, we will move on.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to the next item on our regular agenda. This is item 7-3, planning application 22-005. This is a conditional use and parking waiver. Oops, my agenda. Sorry, just left my screen. This is a conditional use permit and parking waiver for Bright Start Montessori at 1600 Solano. And that I'll turn it over to staff for a presentation.
Great. Thank you, Chair Waddy. Before you tonight, Commission, is the second application you will see for 1600 Solano this year so far. Once again, this is planning application 22-005, and this is for a conditional use and parking waiver for a daycare center at 1600 Solano. Some background on the property. The subject property is a 5,112 square foot lot with an existing 1,543 square foot building that was originally built as a single family home and was previously used as commercial space. The subject property is located in the Solano commercial zoning district and is a corner lot with street frontage along Solana Avenue and Ordway Street as well. Recent project requests. As I mentioned, at the January 26th Planning and Zoning Commission hearing, a study session was held for a potential mixed-use residential building filed under planning application 21-015. The commission provided feedback to both the applicant and staff. No action was taken at that hearing regarding the mixed-use development. And before you tonight is the second planning application for 1600 Solano, which was filed on January 3rd of this year as PA 22-005 and is the subject of tonight's review. The applicant for this conditional use permit is seeking approval from the commission for a new daycare center to operate within the existing building that exists on site right now. Here's a street view of the property as it sits today. Business information. The applicant is seeking to establish a new non-family daycare center under the business name of Bright Start Montessori Preschool. A maximum of 40 children ages 3 months to 5 years old and up to 4 employees are anticipated on site at any given time. Business hours are proposed to be 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. Lease duration. Given that there were two very different planning applications filed for this property, staff reached out to the property owner regarding the tentative timelines they anticipated for both the daycare use and the proposed mixed-use building. The property owners indicated that to staff that the proposed daycare center is anticipated to operate for 1 to 2 years until the building permit for the mixed-use residential building is granted, or if it is granted. The property owner also informed staff that the applicant of the daycare center is aware of the subject property's potential future. And with regard to parking, pursuant to section 2028-030 of the AMC, non-family daycare uses require 1 off-street parking space per 6 individuals under care. With that, the applicant is proposing a maximum of 40 children. So this yields a requirement of 7 off-street parking spaces. As noted in the supplemental questionnaire for the conditional use permit, the applicant noted that there were 4 off-street parking spaces provided on site. However, when staff went to do a site visit, it's clear that at least one of the parking spaces is not code compliant with parking standards, current parking standards. And so with that, the commission should take that into consideration as we process this. 28040 of the zoning code, this provision indicates that the community development director may actually adjust the parking requirements or allow off-site parking via a minor use permit. However, because the daycare use triggers the conditional use permit, this is brought before the commission regardless. And this code provision applies only to building areas less than 2,000 square feet in area. The existing building on site at 1600 Solano is approximately 1,543 square feet, as mentioned previously. Should the commission approve the conditional use permit required for the daycare use on site, the community development department is prepared to waive the off-street parking requirements. In summary, this would result in a total of 3 off-street compliant parking spaces for the daycare center. And here's a view of the subject property from Ordway, looking at the parking spaces. You'll note that there are 2 double wide curb cuts along Ordway. And then this is the parking spaces that are in question as far as compliance. In measuring them on site, they're approximately 13 feet in length. So that can't quite accommodate most modern vehicles. And then here's a photo provided by the applicant showing how one parking space was previously utilized in the past. Correspondences received. Staff has received 3 correspondences with respect to this project proposal. 2 of the correspondences expressed concerns with traffic, off-street parking, and unloading zones for parents of the proposed daycare center use. We did receive 1 correspondence that expressed support for the daycare center in the subject property in general. With that, the project is categorically exempt from SEQA, and recommendation, staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission review and approve the proposed project subject to the findings and conditions of approval. And with that, that concludes my presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Chris. Are there any questions for staff before we turn it over to the project applicant? Seeing no other questions, I actually had a couple quick questions for staff. Do we know how many square feet is the main floor where the childcare is being proposed? It sounds like the childcare is on the main floor and the ground level is storage.
That's a good question. I'm not sure the exact particulars of that because no floor plan was provided. We may be able to defer that question to the project applicant.
Okay, that was one of my other questions. I was actually sort of perplexed to not see floor plans for a proposed childcare facility. Is that not a requirement for a change of use?
It's not a requirement, strictly speaking, through our zoning code. It would be very helpful to see that, and I would agree with that assessment, but no floor plan was provided to staff for review.
Okay, and then the last question that I had was, it's my understanding that the state requires both a minimum square footage per pupil for interior space as well as a minimum square footage of 75 square feet per student for outdoor play areas. It doesn't look to me, again, because we didn't have plans, I was kind of eyeballing it a little bit, but it does not look like the outdoor area comes close to meeting the square footage that would be required. Again, I'm not 100% confident in my understanding of state law, but again, with my day job, I often have looked at this before. And my understanding is that I believe it's close to about a 75 square feet per child for outdoor square footage, which would put it at a 3,000 square foot requirement of outdoor play area. Do you have any sense of code compliance relative to any of those provisions of whether this is actually going to be able to be a licensed facility by the state if we grant this conditional use?
Those are all really great questions. And unfortunately, I'm not as familiar with those state regulations as well. So I wouldn't feel comfortable speaking for sure on any aspect of that. And once again, I would have to defer to the applicant for more.
Okay. Great. I'll hold those questions for the applicant once the applicant comes on. Those were my only questions, but I'll turn it over to the other commissioners here. Commissioner McLeod.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I'm a little confused. The previous application for the housing development stated there were something like 3 dwelling units in this building. Four, that's right. And then this application says it was a dentist's office. I mean, is it vacant? I mean, I don't even know I'm really confused as to that. That's one thing. And then there is a floor plan provided. It was the supplemental questionnaire, and it shows a floor plan. And I guess my question there is that the application states there will be no more than 4 employees, but then I see 5 separate rooms for kids, like separate classrooms, if you will, based on age group. And I don't see how you could possibly staff that with less than 5. And then depending on how many kids there are, you might have to have even more staff for infants if there are more than 4, and toddlers, there's, pretty stringent requirements. And then I'm also a little concerned about bathroom access because there are very specific requirements for each age group, and numbers of toilets, and things like that. So I'm a little concerned about this. And if there is an outdoor requirement for a daycare center, then I don't see how this is a viable daycare center at all. So maybe the applicant can address that, term in the, maybe when they get them on there, but I don't know if staff can answer the what's going on there now. Are there dwelling units? Is it vacant? I mean, that sort of thing.
I can answer all of those questions. The property is, as far as we know, and what the property owner has indicated to us, is vacant. The county also indicates that there's 4 units, which is confusing, but I believe it's because it was used as office space. So there may be some confusion there with that, because it doesn't seem like that's accurate. So there is some conflicting information with these different entities. Unfortunately, I can't answer the questions with respect to the state requirements for the outdoor spaces for children, as well as the amount of employees for the specific age groups as well. So I would have to defer to the applicant for that.
Chair Waddy, if I may jump in with respect to the state licensing, we haven't attempted to vet this against the state requirements, this application. We did include a special condition that requires the applicant to fully comply with state requirements. So by approving, if the commission were to take action on this and approve it, you wouldn't be in any way waiving any of those state requirements. They would have to meet those requirements first, and then the condition of approval would take effect. The conditional use permit would take effect. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Commissioner Momin.
Yeah, thank you. Just wanted to make sure the parking requirement, is it only based on the number of students? There is no parking required for the staff?
Yeah, if you look in that code section, it only specifically about the individuals under care under that specific code section there. So with that, staff derived a requirement of 7, and we rounded up for that number. Can look and double check that too.
Commissioner Momin, did you have any other questions?
No, thanks.
Okay. Great. Any other questions of staff before we open it for the project sponsor to give us a presentation? Okay. Seeing no other questions from the commission, then why don't we go ahead and ask the project applicant to go ahead and raise your hand now so that we can have you provide us with a presentation.
I see our project applicant, Samudra. Samudra, you can go ahead and speak whenever you're ready.
Okay. Hi, good evening. Me and my son, we are planning to work together. So any questions we would be allowing to answer.
We will be answering it together. Hopefully that's not going to be too annoying. All right. So first and foremost, thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. The time that you guys have committed to look over everything. So with some of the questions that you guys have already raised, the best way I can tell you is that we have to have community care licensee to come to the facility and to kind of look over and see. Now we have put in that we want to have 40 students, which we'll call 8 being infants and about 10, about 10,
20, 30 being
30 being 3 and up, and 10 being infants. So they would come there, they will look at the facility, and they'll look at the square footage outside, and then they will give us exactly an estimate to go by within to exactly how many students we'll be able to have at the facility.
Accommodate at a time.
But as of right now, also another thing that I heard was the bathrooms. We had somebody come in and we had
it's in the proposal.
Yes, we got that fixed. So with the parking, another thing is this that we have to figure out is that right as
when I didn't ask all those things. I'm sorry. So do you have any questions for us? So we will be answering those questions. So if anyone has anything that we need to specifically let us address.
Well, you're welcome to give us a presentation, and then we can also ask you questions afterwards. So feel free and finish your presentation that you have, and we'll follow up when you're finished.
This is first time we ever done a presentation.
So let me. I'm so sorry. So we are a family Montessori preschool owners, and for us, we've always been interested in moving into Albany, being the fact that we live there. I personally went to school there. We're really affiliated with the community. And when this property was brought to our attention, we really wanted to make something happen. We are well aware that the owners have they have some plans that which we're aware of it now, but at the same time, it's so difficult to find a location, especially in that area. And we thought that within that 1 year lease, that we could probably, hopefully, be of service to the community and do something for them. So basically for us, we're really optimistic about trying to get this together and of being service.
Okay, thanks for your presentation, and we'll have some questions for you as well, so please stay on the line. Commissioner Donaldson, go ahead.
Yes, certainly. I wanted to find out how are you related to the Bright Star School Child Care Center that was, I think is no longer, at Marin and Santa Fe. Are you the same operators, the same people? Mm-hmm.
Let's start.
No,
we are not the same. That's a coincidence that kind of came to be, but no, we're not affiliated.
Okay, that's good to know. I was curious about that. Okay, thank you. So yeah, I probably have some other questions too. A couple of questions I have. I don't see anything on your plans about any drop-off zones, or how are you going to accommodate the children, or will there be a drop-off zone, or are you expecting that the parents will park their cars, bring the children in, or park their cars and come in to get the children at the end of the day? And then the other thing is, the Bright Star down, or the other one on Santa Fe, had a lot of bike racks installed adjacent to it, and I was on the commission when that was approved, and we were told at the time that a number of the parents would be urged to bicycle the children to the center. And have you thought about that? And have you thought about where bicycle racks might be there, or how you might accommodate parents bringing their children in on bikes? Mm-hmm. So those are my first two questions. Mm-hmm.
Okay, sounds good. Well, starting with the bicycle option, that would be, being the fact that in the area there's a lot of people that do that commute with bikes. We haven't looked too much into it, but that's something that we could definitely implement. With the other factor is that you're talking about the drop-off zone, right? Yes. Well, the way our business model, the way our preschool Montessori system is set up, usually like, let's just say any public school, like when school starts at 8:30, you have an influx of all these cars coming in about that time to drop off their kids. The way it's set up for us as an example, different parents have different schedules, and certain people might want to come at 7:30, other people at 8:20. So one thing that we want to do is that we understand that Solano being busy and Ordway, that whole junction it can be a little hectic. We wanted to hopefully set up a system where we can have one of the staff members be on call to run downstairs and to obviously help out. And we've done that before at two of our other facilities that we have, of course, during the rain or whatever the case may be. So that's something that we definitely, we've been, chatting about, trying to brainstorm.
At the same time.
Yeah. So also one thing that, to add on, it's very rare that the way our system is set up, it's very rare to have two parents come at the same time. So we have two parking spots available as of right now. And that should, from what we're looking forward to, now we propose 40 students, but ideally, that's a hopeful, we're being very hopeful about that. We're actually we're guesstimating quite less, but we're expecting that those two parking spots should be more than adequate for the people to, at least get in. And if there's anything that's, if parents can't do that within those two parking spots, we can definitely send a staff member, whoever's inside to go outside and be of service and help to the parent that wants to drop off their child.
Or parent could help from outside.
Please stay within 5 minutes. Okay. Commissioner Donaldson, did you have any other questions?
Oh, thank you. Not at the moment.
Okay, great. Then next up, Commissioner McLeod.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I'm a little just puzzled about the number of employees that would be there, because on the little floor plan you showed, there would be 5 rooms, and I would imagine you'd have to have a staff person in each room, and with infants, if there are 8, 2 staff people. So, I just want to make sure your application is accurate and reflects the number of employees there. And I understand from what I've read that there's no parking requirement associated with the number of employees, but I just still would like the application to be accurate, I suppose. And then my other question would be, what do you propose for the outdoor space? Would you fence the whole front area around the tree and use that, or?
Start with the 8 inches.
Yeah. So what I could do is this: I'll give the first portion of your question, which happens to be how many staff per student. My mom will take care of that, and I will address Okay, well, let me get to my point then. Okay, so you were talking about the outdoor space. One thing that we're gonna have to, what we thought about is that let's say that we do happen to have, let's say 30 students at our facility. There's no way that we can take all of them outside at that time, especially given the square footage that's available out there. So what we would, the plan that we have set forth is that we would have to accommodate them by taking at least maybe 12 by exactly what's available. Because of course, community care licensing will come out and they'll look at the area and they'll let us know that we can have, this many kids at this spot for what we can do for any playtime, any play area. So what we'll do is that we will be taking kids out accordingly to how many that we can have at that time, and we'll probably break the play times accordingly to that. And going back to one thing that you said about the how many staff members we'll need for the facility, depending on the students, my mom will go ahead and answer that for you.
Yeah, if you could just just to follow up.
Yes.
So the outdoor,
the fencing, right?
There would be 75 square feet per child required. And then where do you propose having that outdoor space? Are you going to fence off the front grassed area with the big tree in the middle? That's the only outdoor space I can see that could be used.
Yeah.
Can I explain that?
Yes.
Yes. We are not going to take more than 7 kids at a time. And it's not a running, we do gardening, we have all these things they do, not running in big playground. We don't have space over there. It's more like a nature-based. Children will be doing a lot of gardening and so forth. Infants won't be able to go outside to play. They are infants. We will have one room specifically for them to play indoor, because there are 3 months and 8 of those kids, infants, fall into 8, one teacher for 8 kids. And when 3 and up, 12 kids for one teacher ratio. That's what community care license do. And we have a couple other centers. So I'm pretty well aware with the amount, but we will not fence anything in the front. We do not need outdoor. We will keep in that particular area we have in the back. We will manage that by taking into groups of children to play at a time. We do not want to be having loud screaming. It's not going to happen in a Montessori environment, outdoor, indoor. It's going to be different from other schools and daycare centers, as well as the parking will be, again, all these parents are not going to be parking at one time. One teacher, normally I go with my husband or my son. So someone is driving me there. So there's 2 of one family will be all time. And we are all full directresses, all full qualified people to run the program. And within a year, I doubt about having 10 kids. It's not going to happen. It's going to be a miracle if we get 30 kids. So we will be blessed if that's the case. But with the infants, I do hear a lot of people, I think it's going to be a amazing program we are going to offer for Albany and those families, which I think is going to be benefiting the families. I hope I answer your question.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions of the project applicant from commissioners before we open it up for public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and open it up now for public comment. So I know we've got a handful of folks in the queue. So now is your opportunity to raise your hand if you'd like to provide public testimony on this item. So again, please go ahead and raise your hand, and Jeff will call your name when it's your turn to speak.
Thank you, Chair Waddy. First person up is Donald Carey. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks again. Yeah, this is the reason I called tonight, and I'll speak quickly because there's a lot of things being missed. I'm a grandfather, and my daughter-in-law has just had a child, and we were looking for daycare. She notified me that she phoned around, and none of them were taking young children. They were taking 3-year-olds and older. And so I said, well, that can't be. I'm sure there's something. So I started looking around. And, Albany's got 9 daycare centers, and none of them are taking the young children. So one of them was a Montessori, or quite a few of them, I think, were Montessori. And she told me that of this group that had years and years of experience and that specialized in really young children that still were in diapers. And I said, okay, that's great. And but I couldn't connect with her because I hadn't really started yet. I didn't have a phone number, but she told me they were starting up on a corner, and I went up and I visited that house. And there's a painter inside, so I got to walk around in, and I share with you, it is peculiar as a daycare center because it has small rooms and it has no kitchen. One of those rooms that was being discussed is actually, I think, going to have to be a kitchen because daycare has to have a food preparation area for the kids. That building was previously doing programming. It was never a dental office. It was a gentleman for about, I'd say 10 years working on software and with volunteer students from UC Berkeley. And they took up really one room. The rest of the place was vacant. So that's what it used to be. The parking, the traffic in that area is very, very low at commute time in the mornings. It's not like the daycare center on Key Route where the traffic is nuts. It's not like any address that would be on Solano, on Marin. And so it's not a heavily trafficked area. The businesses across the street from it, the only one that has much business is in the afternoons, and that's an ice cream place. The other thing too is I found when I was inside, it was kind of dark from the northeast side. It was close to another building, so I can't imagine anyone putting a high rise that would be that shaded. You were discussing that earlier this evening. Anyway, lastly, I only have 23 seconds. The concept that there is just for mothers to get out on the job force is not correct. The correct attitude is that it's to educate the children before they get into kindergarten. And this lady is an expert at it, according to other Montessori people I've talked to. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, Jeremiah Pinguelo. Please go ahead, Jeremiah.
Oh, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Chair Liz Waddy and former Vice Mayor, Mr. Pilch. I just want to bring up the elephant in the room about the liquor store across the street. You know, I just don't know why it would be common sense to put a preschool with little kids next to a liquor store. I mean, just right across the street, less than 50 feet away, all this wine, all these bottles of alcohol. It even says it on the outside of the building, wine. So these kids, the first word they're going to learn to read, or the first word they're going to learn to speak is going to be wine. You know, I mean, I'm just saying, there's just big words across the street with wine, you know, wine. Fermented grapes, alcohol, right? You know, I don't know, you're talking about state laws. You know, the school zones, I mean, we don't technically have them yet, but there is still state school zones, which is no drugs, no guns within 1,000 feet of schools, within 1,000 feet. And here, within 50 feet, you're selling wine. You know? I mean, what's next? We approve putting up a preschool next to a cannabis club. I mean, where's the line going to be drawn? We have to have some common sense, right? So, and then also said the parents don't pick up and drop off kids at the same time. Really? I'm sure most parents drop off their kids in the morning, maybe around 8, 9. They pick up their kids around maybe 5 or 6 latest. You know, so where's the evacuation zone? What if there's a fire? Where are all those 40 kids that have not even learned how to cross a street yet? They don't know to look both ways, running from a fire. Where's the evacuation zone? And we're going to need to put up a crossing guard up there too. So maybe if you want to help pay for a crossing guard and, I don't know, do a lot of other things, but, you know, you're going to have an AED device on scene. You're really far away from the fire department in case of an emergency. It's going to take at least 5-10 minutes for an ambulance to get up there. If a kid, you know, have a difficult time chewing a banana, I don't know. I just think there's better places for preschool than in a high traffic area.
Thank you. Next speaker is Howard Graves. Howard, please go ahead.
Oh, I'm muted. Hold on. What is this? Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, I'm a neighbor of this project, a long-term Albany resident. I agree that we do need preschool services for families in Albany, and this is an appropriate location. It is very problematic, though. I've lived here 39 years. First of all, it never has been a dental office, so that's a misstatement in the application. And its staffing, its proposal is to take care of 40 children, 8 of whom are infants, who would require 2 staff members under state regulations, and another 25 or 30, which would require up to 5 staff, could require 7 staff. They're proposing to have only 3 parking spots, 2 of which they're proposing as drop-off zone. So they're only proposing putting in 1 parking spot for upward of 7 staff, which means that street parking, particularly for businesses in the area, are likely to be significantly impacted by this. I really think a facility with 40 children or even 30 children really needs 2 very clear drop-off zones, and the parking they propose for their staff seems completely inadequate. I worry very much that there'll be a lot of double parked cars, particularly on Ordway Street, parents stopping, turning on their blinkers and taking children in or checking children out. Your commission's been notified by our community before that this is a very dangerous intersection. Turning cars have poor sight lines. It's just a dangerous place to be dropping children on and off, and double parking could be deadly. It should be indicated by fines or other things that no double parking would be allowed at this site. And unfortunately, parents aren't going to find much of any parking in the neighborhood during business hours. So I really think that this site is more suitable for a much smaller facility, more like 20 students rather than 40. I think the city needs to set up barriers to prevent people from trying to cross Solano on the east side, directly across from the corner where this facility is located, as they've done down on Jackson Street and Buchanan. And I think the applicant should be encouraged to resubmit an application for a much smaller program. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Karen Lismer. Apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. Karen, please go ahead. Karen, I think you're muted.
Okay. Am I still muted?
No, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have to revise my notes here accordingly, so pardon me. I've been living here since '65, so I came as a very young mother with 2 very, very young children, and I've seen the changes here. And I knew the family who lived at the corner, and I know it's a 3-bedroom, 1-story structure. It's there's so many. I don't understand why the planning committee didn't check all these mistakes there. But anyway, now that my new comments are, first of all, 40 children requires at least 7 teachers and aides to deal with this group of population, because I think the state requirement is 6 children to 1 adult, and there's only 1 bathroom. The outdoor space, fresh air space is very inadequate for that amount of children, even if you bring them up in out in groups. I have my whole little family of 3 children down at the Masonic preschool, where we were we were we also kicked in as parents. And it was very, very organized. But I would like to ask the people who are applying for this how long they've been in business, and also what they call the name Montessori, because apparently, from what I understand, please correct me, is the Montessori name is a special brand name of Montessori education. And I didn't know that they took infants as young as 3 months. And what were they licensed under? Okay. The other thing I'd like to bring up is the drop-off zones. There's no drop-off zone. Like my dear neighbor across the street said, we have this dangerous intersection. And the intersection has been dangerous for years and complicated. And all of a sudden we are having 80, not drop-offs, because children who are that young are not dropped off. They are escorted inside.
Karen, if you could wrap up your comments, please.
Yes, so I'm concerned about the dropping off, which is not existing. Parents have to bring their children in because they have to be registered and also checked out at the end of the day. So we are having more than 80 vehicles coming and going during the day, and it's impossible.
Okay,
it's
thank you very
an
much.
impossible situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person up is Julie Baller. Julie, please go ahead.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, thank you very much. I appreciate the chance to talk with the commissioners and Chairman Waddy. So I live in the area. I've had 3 children go through Albany preschool and daycare in Albany, although it was a while ago. So I have some understanding of how the situation works. I do support having a child care center as an attractive use for this site, in that it would have an immediate beneficial impact on a pressing local social need. Mothers have been really slammed by the lack of adequate child care, especially in the COVID era, but even before that. So I think child care is a social good, but I am concerned that this intended use of it is just a flash in the pan, since the owners of the property have indicated their ambition for a far more intensive development of the property. I strongly believe that safety issues must be addressed and not glossed over if this particular application goes forward, especially since some of the same safety issues would arise for the large mixed-use development discussed in the last planning and zoning meeting. The intersection, especially that southeast corner where both the daycare and the large development would be located, are not pedestrian safe. This was recognized in 2019 by the city's own Complete Streets program, which proposed a redesign of the intersection with a plaza and with reorienting the entrance of Tacoma Avenue, which currently enters at an offset from Ordway at an acute angle, which severely obstructs the view of traffic, both bicycle and car traffic coming downhill on Solano. Cars come downhill on Solano too fast. They often are over the speed limit. This has been recognized by the city. They didn't put a crosswalk across Solano at that very corner because there's no safe way to cross there. Half the customers would be required to cross 2 or 3 streets to get around the intersection because you can't go directly across with preschoolers in tow. I think this use would greatly increase foot traffic. I suggest that the city take safety measures and implement the design, safety design that they planned 2 years ago before they have put 40 children being dropped off or picked up or walked over to this site. And in particular, the city has blocked a similar unsafe intersection near Ocean View Elementary School by putting up metal barriers and saying you may not cross here, and there's no crosswalk across Buchanan Street. I think the city should do the same thing at this corner before they implement a heavier pedestrian use at this corner. I appreciate the chance to talk to the commission about this.
Thank you. The next speaker, Miriam Kaminsky, please go ahead.
Okay, I got it. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead. Miriam, please go ahead. You may be muted.
Hi, do you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, let's try it again. I don't have any objections to a daycare center at 1600 Solano, but I do want to raise the following safety issues regarding the site. The daycare application is stating there are currently 4 off-street parking spaces. As we've discussed, it's an incorrect calculation. There are really only 3 legal parking spaces. So, and they're asking for a waiver of 3, but they actually need a waiver of 4 spaces. The application says there will be 4 staff members at the daycare, but if 40 children are at the center, California law requires that there be at least 7 staff members present. The ratio should be 1 to 6 at least. So they'll need additional parking for staff members as well as for the children and the parents. A quick survey of the surrounding area yesterday at approximately 2 p.m. showed that there were 0 parking spaces available on Ordway Street. That's 0. I want to emphasize how important safe parking is for this particular location. A daycare center requires young children to be frequently delivered and picked up, and the intersection of Ordway, Solano, and Tacoma is an irregular and especially dangerous intersection for pedestrians and young children. The applicant is requesting a waiver for parking spaces, but a preschool at this location creates a high demand for safe parking. There's no reason to allow parking waivers. Parents cannot just open the car door and drop off young children. They need to safely park and accompany their children, and to do this, they need parking. This proposed site has inadequate parking and no drop-off or pickup space. It's unrealistic to think parents will not use cars for picking up kids. Residents of this area know how dangerous this particular intersection can be. Police statistics tell us there have been at least 7 accidents at this intersection in the past few years. The city of Albany is taking a liability risk by not requiring safe parking for young children and infants at an intersection that is already known for hazardous traffic conditions and accidents. In the Albany Complete Streets program, the meeting notes of May 2019 indicate that the city was already aware of the dangers of this particular intersection and the need for more parking and wanted the intersection redesigned. In fact, staff recommended, and I quote, "The draft plan is intended to identify opportunities to improve pedestrian safety. At the Tacoma Avenue intersection, staff proposes reducing the crossing length by creating a plaza." And later they go on to say that the plan increases the net parking by 9 spaces because they recognize the need for more parking. So in conclusion, the increased traffic and congestion of a large preschool at this intersection will exacerbate an already dangerous situation. And I urge you to deny parking waivers and prioritize the safety of young children and pedestrians in this particularly dangerous intersection. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next speaker, Allison Grinstead. Allison, please go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
So I think a preschool daycare center could be a lovely use for this property, but I cannot say that I feel that the area is safe for the parking and for the parents. Just as my neighbors have stated, this is a particularly dangerous intersection. So I think that the safety has to come first. I think the applicant and the city need to be aware of the concerns and of the potential danger and need to take steps to avoid that and to make the property or the daycare center safe. But it could be a nice business for that property. It just needs to be, you just need to ensure the safety of it. And it's unreasonable to think that parents aren't going to come around, clustered around the same time during the day for pickup and drop off. And typically in the morning, Solano Avenue, it is pretty busy with cars going up the street, generally probably to get coffee, and they're speeding at an unreasonable speed. So it can be, again, very dangerous, and just urge the commission and the city to be aware of that. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Waddy, I'm not seeing any other public speakers with their hands raised.
Okay, great. Then with that, we will go ahead and close public comment and turn it back to the commission for deliberation. Any commissioners like to start off the discussion? Commissioner Donaldson.
Okay. Yeah, I'll give it a try here. I don't know what to do here. I have a feeling that this application is premature. It's not well enough flushed out, and I think, but I wouldn't want to foreclose the option of the applicant going and working with the state regulators to get a state permit. In other words, if the state regulators require a city permit first, then I think we have a problem here. My preferred approach, I think, would be to continue this until we find out what the limitations are with respect to the building, the rooms, and the open space, all of those things that might affect the capacity of this childcare center. And I suspect that it's going to be much lower than 40 students. And I would have a problem approving a project as applied with for 40 students. That is a lot for me. My big concerns are the parking, as you might know. But I suspect that the building and the site are not big enough to accommodate a 40 student daycare center. I would really like to know what the right number is. Is it going to be realistically 20 children? Then I might be quite willing to support that. If it's going to be 24 children, 28 children, 30, I don't know. I really like to know better. I suspect it's not going to be 40. I don't know. That's where I'm at on it. I kind of prefer to continue it. And if I have to vote on it as a 40 unit, a 40 student childcare center, I'd be inclined to vote against it at this point. We've had a lot of comments about the intersection safety, and I know that's a real issue to a lot of people. I'm not so certain that's an issue for the children under 5. I think they'll always be supervised by adults all around, and that does not, like I'm not very concerned about it being across from a wine shop either. I don't think that the children are going to be at risk from that intersection. And anyway, but I hear, I do know that it is a difficult intersection. I know that the Solano Avenue specific complete streets plan calls for modifying it significantly so that Tacoma has a 90-degree intersection with Solano, which would be much better and much safer. And I hope we get to do that someday. But I'm not, but anyway, my biggest concern is the size of the child care center that's being proposed. And I think it's oversized. And I suspect that the state wouldn't allow it to proceed at that size. So that's my comment at the moment. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Commissioner Donaldson. Commissioner Momin.
Thank you. I totally agree with Commissioner Donaldson regarding the clarity on the capacity. It is very possible that based on the available outdoor and indoor space, the permitted capacity would be much less. And so it would be better to deliberate on parking waivers only after there is clarity on what the capacity is permitted. And so I think we should allow the proposal to be continued, and the applicant should coordinate with the licensing department and get better information about the capacity, and then we can think about the parking. But overall, I support conditional use permit for childcare in this location. I think it is conveniently located.
Thank you, Commissioner Momin. Commissioner McLeod.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the aerial view. There is a little yard space in the backyard, and then I would assume the front yard would have to be used for open space. And that could be fenced to, you know, provide a safer environment for the kids. I'm a little ambivalent about it. I on the one hand, you know, the state licensing process is not something that we really are responsible for, and they will set different limits or set different standards or very specific standards for a daycare. And it's true that the actual number of kids could be way less, which would change the parking requirement. And also, I mean, the applicant did mention that, I mean, it just sounds like a marketing thing. They're not going to ramp up to 40 kids, you know, day one. It might take, you know, might take a year or more to get larger numbers of students or kids, as you might say. And I was wondering about the possibility, and maybe Jeff, you could answer that. Is it possible to have two temporary loading zones put in outside the house there? Is that something that could be done in a reasonably quick fashion? You know, I mean, there's two spaces in front of the house on Santa Fe that could easily become, you know, green curb drop-off zones, 5 minute. Is that a possibility?
Technically, it's a possibility. I think we would want to take kind of a holistic view of all the parking situation in that immediate area and take into consideration impacts on residents and nearby businesses and so forth. But yes, we can change parking designations, curb colors pretty quickly once it seems, you know, once it's clear that it's an appropriate step to take. But I think we would probably do that through the Transportation Commission. Right, okay. At the appropriate time.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, there are, practically speaking, 4 on-street parking spaces in front of this house. You know, there's one kind of between the 2 driveways, 2 in front towards the corner, and then another one even on the other side on Solano. So in a way, it's pretty well served by on-street parking. So if 2 of those spaces became drop-off zones, I think that would alleviate some of the worry about double parking. You know, and just backing up a little bit, I mean, I do support the daycare center in principle. I think it is a valuable service for our community, and it's really helpful. And in the pandemic, it's been extremely difficult for people to get daycare. And, you know, as we're kind of getting back towards normalcy, I think it's actually something we really should be encouraging and supporting. So, you know, I would like to support this application. You know, and I don't know if it's really our responsibility to verify how many kids can actually, it's not our responsibility, I don't think, to verify how many kids it could actually support. That would be state licensing. So, you know, I'd be prepared to support this and let them move forward with that process. And it also, you know, depending on the other application, this may only be a 2-year proposition here, so that it's not necessarily a long-term issue for the neighborhood either. And I think the traffic safety issue on Solano is kind of a separate issue. And, you know, I don't think you can put the burden of that on this project. You know, we've seen that a lot. It's like one project is not responsible for the safety issues or solving them, or, you know, it's almost as if, okay, no development can happen at all in this corner of town because there's a dangerous intersection, which I wouldn't support that proposition. So I'd actually like to support this project. And if there could be, you know, 2 drop-off curb zones in front of it, I think that would be perfectly adequate for me. And then I would be willing to let the applicants move forward with getting their state licensing, and they will face their own hurdles. And that may be actually quite burdensome to make this happen, but that, you know, it's a different state entity that is responsible for that and would approve it and would make sure they adhere to those requirements. And they are very strict. And so I would actually be willing to support this project.
Thank you, Commissioner McLeod. Commissioner Pilch.
Yeah, I think I can be brief because I support all the comments of my fellow commissioners. The application does bother me because it didn't seem to pencil out in my own mind the 40 students and the 4 staff members, even without knowing state regulations. So that worries me a bit. On the other hand, it is not us who will have to license if there's a state licensing process for the actual facility. I do, as other commissioners said, I do support this project. I think it'd be great to have another child care facility, especially one that serviced infants. And I know from my own life that those are difficult to find. And I would support a parking waiver. And I think, as Commissioner McLeod is suggesting, we can figure out ways to make sure they have the right pick-up and drop-off management plan, either be that dedicating one spot to drop off one off-street spot that's always available for drop-off, having a couple of spots on the street that are designated for drop-off, maybe just during certain hours, certain morning hours and afternoon hours, and at other hours there for general parking. And I don't think that that's going to be a big issue. I actually lived, 10 years ago, I actually lived right across the street on Ordway from this project and did not notice a particular huge parking problem there. Those spaces were often unutilized. Those parking spaces in front of, on Ordway, in front of that project, were often unutilized. So I think we can work through this. And I would support the application now, or if with staff to do due diligence about all the issues we've raised, or I would support bringing it back with perhaps more clarification from the applicants and a plan from the staff and or Traffic and Safety Commission about the drop off. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner Pilch. And just quickly before I turn it over to Commissioner Donaldson again, just my quick thoughts on here. I'm of kind of two minds on this, and I'm a little bit torn. I agree certainly with Commissioner Donaldson in that it feels almost a little premature to act on this. Although again, I'm very supportive of childcare at this location and completely agree this is a really urgent public policy issue and we need to provide additional childcare. And I also know from my sister looking for childcare and other folks, it's very hard to find. And I think this is a great location. It felt like the application was a little bit slim on a lot of the technical information to give me the confidence, at least just reading the paperwork before the applicant spoke, to feel like this was a really thought through application. On the flip side, I know Waldorf preschools often have a very good, Montessori preschools have a very strong reputation, and it sounds like this person is well-versed in this industry. But I'm sort of toying with that, and the 40 kids does seem a lot given sort of the sparse application with not a lot of substance. And so on the one hand, I think that this application could benefit from a little bit more time and thought around it. On the flip side, I think if this proposal was before us tonight, after hearing what I've heard for 20 kids, for example, I wouldn't have the same consternation that I'm having right now. I think to me, it's sort of that 20 to 40 kid jump where I feel like it's not quite ripe and it feels a little sparse of an application, but I would be confident with 20 kids. There's sort of a lesser issue around the parking, around the loading, around the size of the facility and the amenities within the facility and the outdoor space. And again, I know those are not necessarily things for us to flesh out, but I do think we have a responsibility to think about the overall land use as well. So I'm a little bit of two minds on that. I could certainly be supportive of supporting a motion tonight, I think with a lesser capacity, knowing that Chris and Jeff are super fast at getting applications to us. And so if this applicant, you know, hit their 18th kid and they're going gangbusters here and everything's going really, really well, that I would be very supportive of giving that feedback now, that if they wanted to submit a revised application at a later date to take them up from that number because they're able to demonstrate that everything's going well. I think that's something that's very easy to get to us in an expeditious manner. So anyhow, that's where I am right now. So TBD, I guess, on where this vote is going to go. But with that, I will turn it over to Commissioner Donaldson for your additional thoughts.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I do a couple other sort of technical site planning issues that I have in mind. The driveways, there's two curb cuts there. There's two driveways. One has a real deep concrete pad, easily accommodate two cars at full meaning full specs. The other one is that red painted driveway that is Chris measured at 13 feet something long, very, very shallow. That driveway looks like, approaches what looks like to me used to be a garage door or a push-in kind of thing where the building is cantilevered over it. And then a small wood structure has been kind of enclosed around that in that space. I suspect that if that old wooden structure were taken out, and it looks kind of temporary almost to me, that you would probably have two legal parking spaces there on the driveway. At least you'd nose the cars under the building. And I think there'd be space for that. So I see the potential maybe of getting 4 parking spaces there. So that's where you park the employees or most of the employees. And then for the drop-off zones, the school management could tell the parents that they need to drop off the children in the curb cuts, at the curb cuts, because the faculty will be parking, using those parking spaces there. So I think that I would see that as sort of a pragmatic operational plan having the students, the parents' cars parked off. And if the applicant follows what if I understand the applicant correctly, the students would probably only be coming 1 or 2 at a time, in various shifts throughout the morning. So that might work okay. And Solano is actually empty in the morning. My concerns are really the pickup time at the end of the day when Solano is busy and Ordway is parked up as well. I think that's the time of day that we need to be concerned about pragmatically. So there's just some other thoughts I have about how it might operate. And as far as proceeding further, if no one else has any comments, I guess I'm prepared to move a continuance, but if anyone wants to move approval with a specific number, I'd be happy to listen to that too. So, thank you, Commissioner Donaldson. Commissioner Pilch.
And so one thing that came up for me that we don't want to forget is, the staff doesn't have to come by car. Parents don't have to come by car. We mentioned bicycles, so bicycle parking, a plan for bicycle parking has to be part of this as well. So let's not forget about that. The street also, let's not forget, is served by a bus line. But I wanted to know if staff had any recommendations. Given all our concerns, I think we need to at least come back with an update to this project. So should we approve it tonight so the project can continue to go through the process, or does staff think we should just continue it and have some of these details that some of our concerns addressed in the next meeting and where we can approve it? Does staff have any opinion?
Did you want me to speak on it?
I'll take the first shot at it, and Christopher, please jump in if you want to add anything. I think this is a policy call for the commission, I'm sorry to say, for the 5 of you to sort out. I think we could we could certainly continue it and bring back a cleaner package and perhaps more information on exactly the number of students that could be accommodated. Or you could approve it with, say, 20 or some number of students today. And if they can, through working through the state, they can get more students in, then we would bring it back to you for an amendment. Either way, it's just, it's your comfort level with how far we would go at the staff level. We certainly will take note of, if you were to approve it this evening, we would take note of all your comments and the public comments and make sure that we've got the drop-off plan. We'll study the parking designations on the street parking spaces, and make sure that it all works. And we always would have the discretion, even if you were to approve it tonight, if we come across something that we feel would be an issue with one or more of you, we would take the opportunity to bring it back with or without your direction this evening. We wouldn't want to have you approve something and then you come back and see something that's very different actually get implemented.
Okay, that helps me land at kind of exactly where I was before, which is I could go either way, kind of like the chair. So I'll let maybe Commissioner McLeod has an opinion.
Go ahead, Commissioner McLeod.
Yeah, I guess I'm curious, and I don't know if it's something that the applicant could answer, but is there kind of a minimum number of students you need to make this viable? I mean, I assume there's rent and expenses, and if there are too few students, you're not going to make a go of it. So I would hesitate to put an arbitrary number on our part, limiting it when it may just make it not a viable business model. So I don't know if the applicants can answer that or what, but I would hesitate to try to impose that limit without knowing, a little better what that number, what kind of numbers they need to make it work.
The sponsor does have their hand raised. So if Jeff, if you're able to give them permissions to speak, maybe they can just quickly answer that question for us.
That's all right. Yeah, I'd be interested to hear that.
Yes, please go ahead.
Hi. After listening to everyone and the input, you guys, it's actually it's phenomenal because there's a lot of concerns that was brought up, and we want to be of service to the community. We don't want to hinder anybody's freedoms to live and to enjoy the neighborhood that they cherish. So with that being said, we do kind of want to reconfigure, because one of the things that were brought up was the altogether the total amount of students that we will be having at the facility, and we are going to hopefully try to look to see what we can do to maybe hit to 20 to the mid 20s. 20. So that's our obviously we're going to talk to the licensee, and we'll try to figure that out so we can accommodate that. And obviously, with that being said, that we'll be able to have a staff number that will be able to help out with the kids, but not also be a hindrance to the community at whole.
Can I say something?
Oh, also my mom was going to say something.
Yes, I would like to bring as you guys discuss the financial side. Is it worth for me to pay all that rent? And I have already spent so much money over there right now. How we proceed to the front forward. So that's something really hard to decide right now. I think at least 26 kids, 24. We needed to at least move forward with all the finances. Otherwise, it would be very difficult.
But ideally, the 40 mark was something that was kind of displaced, but we will have to obviously reconsider, listening to the input that all of you have definitely shared with us.
Yes.
So maybe if I can just follow up with a quick clarifying question. It sounds like you guys are willing to take some time to clarify a few items, refine the student count, and come back to us. So maybe what we could do is give you some final direction and then move to continue this out to maybe our next hearing sometime in mid-March, not too far out, but a couple weeks to give you all a chance to refine the proposal a bit. And it sounds like some of the other, concerns that would be helpful to have clarified is a really explicit plan for drop-off and how your staff will handle drop-off and sort of direct parents to drop off their kids if they are coming from cars, a little maybe better clarity around where bike parking, or if parents are pulling up in cargo bikes, where the dedicated places for that. And then any of the other logistics, I don't know, other commissioners, if there are other questions that we would like to have really clarified in a subsequent. Yes, Commissioner McLeod.
Well, I would appreciate seeing a site plan that would show where you're planning to use the outdoor space for the kids. And, I think it's entirely fine to do it out in the front there with the fence, around the corner, curving corner where the big tree is. I don't see any problem with that. There's no restrictions on having kids out in the front yard as long as they're protected. So a site plan that would show outdoor space. There's also the small yard in the back that's fenced, but it's very dark. And the site plan showing bicycle parking. And you could possibly look at reconfiguring that space at the red driveway by removing that, what looks like sort of a storage shed area. Yeah. Although that may engender some big structural costs. I don't know, because it doesn't, to me, look very well supported above that without something underneath it. So, but I think if we just really get clarity on the number of kids and the number of staff, that would really be important, especially the number of kids, because that reduces the parking requirement, makes it easier for us to approve the project. And then I would agree with Commissioner Waddy about the drop-off pickup plan and all that. And, I would still support some sort of curb drop-off space. Maybe if there's the space in between the two driveways, that could become kind of de facto a very long drop-off space that could be, cars pulling in and out. You could have 2 or 3 cars there at one time and then pulling out again. That could be a viable option, I think. So anyway, that I would just, like more clarity. And then, when you look at licensing requirements, you can see what the bathroom requirements are. You might need to put in more bathrooms. I've done a little work in some schools, and it's very specific for the young kids. You can't actually have enclosed bathrooms. They have to be open, half walls. I mean, there's a lot of other things that you might have to consider for the bathrooms. And it's different for the younger versus the slightly older kids. So I think if you brought back also an interior plan that showed with a lot more clarity what you need to do there, I think that would help convince us that it's really viable and going forward, achievable with the state, et cetera. So I would really appreciate that. And then some clarity, again, on the number of staff people, even though I don't think that limits our zoning requirements, that's not really affecting what kind of decision we make, but it does kind of give us an indication of what kind of traffic you get coming to the school, and anything that you could convince us about with, your staff coming by bicycle or transit would be helpful. And if you yourselves live nearby and don't need to drive and park in the neighborhood, that would also be helpful. So anyway, I would appreciate more information when you come back to talk to us. But overall, I really do support daycare here, and I would really like to see it work. So thank you for bringing that to us.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Pilch.
Yeah, I was going to see if I could try to make a motion here or maybe add on to the motion to continue. So here's what I'm hearing. We want, when we come back, it sounds like there's a consensus to continue, and we want more clarification about bike parking, drop-off, pickup, circulation in general, number of staff, number of students, site plan for both indoors, a more detailed site plan for both indoors and outdoors. Does that seem to jive with the rest of the commissioners? Okay.
I would second that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, so then I'll move to continue with those requirements for the plans that come back to us.
And would staff, would you prefer us to continue this date certain for notification purposes? Would that be helpful? Or will you renotice this?
I think we would prefer to renotice it. We don't want to bring it back until we get all that information, and it's hard to speculate whether that will be a few days or a week or two.
Okay, sounds good. So just continue indefinitely until we get the information we have. Great. So then on that motion by Commissioner Pilch and Commissioner Donaldson, that was a second?
Yes.
Great. Then on that motion, Commissioner McLeod.
I'll vote yes.
Commissioner Momin.
Yes.
Commissioner Donaldson.
Yes.
Commissioner Pilch.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So that item is being continued with that feedback. So we look forward to seeing you back in a bit, Mrs. DeAulis. So with that, we are almost done with our agenda, but not quite. Just confirming with staff. I know our agenda says don't start new items after 9:30. I know this is a non-planning item, but an item we have been struggling to get through for a few weeks. Are we okay to just do it if we're,
yes,
commissioners are okay to plow through it?
I think that would be appropriate to do this evening.
Okay, wonderful. So then next up is item 8, new business. We have one item, 8-1. This is the Planning and Zoning Commission Chair and Vice Chair reorganization. And I am happy to, our staff, did you have any presentation or should we just kick things off here?
Feel free to kick things off. Happy to answer any questions about the process, but it's pretty straightforward.
Perfect. Then I will just take liberties as the chair to just jump in after being chair for 2 rounds here. I'm more than happy to pass the baton here. And I know last time Commissioner Pilch expressed interest, and so I would gladly nominate Commissioner Pilch as chair moving forward.
Thank you.
Does that need a second? I'd be happy to second.
Great. Should we just vote on that and then, or we vote on that and then vote on vice chair perhaps secondly? Does that work?
Yeah, that's correct. Normally it's 2 separate motions.
Okay. Well, then I assume Commissioner Pilch, the floor is yours if you would like to accept that nomination.
Oh, I accept it. Yeah, thank you very much. I do accept. Thank you for the nomination.
Okay, great. So it's been nominated and seconded. Commissioner, oh yeah, Jeff.
I'm sorry, Chair Waddy, I do notice that we have a public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. So we have, should we take this before we make nominations, public comment?
Why don't we
or,
take
I mean, before we, okay, we'll take the public comment now.
Let's take the public comment now.
It's been a long night. All right, with that, then we'll go ahead and open up public comment then on this item for the Commission Chair and Vice Chair reorganization.
Yeah, I just want to say, Chair Liz Waddy, you've done such a great job. You know, just kind of watching you has kind of been part of my civics academy. And I think you've done an excellent job, outstanding. You're very well organized. And I really like how you've always kept these meetings on track. If there's kind of like a delay, you're just quick to just keeping the meetings organized. And your agendas are wonderful. So I think you've done a really great job. And, you know, good luck with whatever you do next.
Okay. Was that it, Jeremiah?
Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you for those words, Jeremiah. It looks like we have one other hand raised, I think, still.
Yes. Donald Carey.
Yeah, thank you. This is Don Carey. Yeah, it's too bad you guys can't open things to comment after you chase down that whole story. You see, she's up against the state for getting that stuff done, and you're asking her to get that approved to come back, and they're not going to approve anything unless they see it, and that means a whole new kitchen. That means safety things for the kids. The whole thing is a bunch of money, and then they'll be able to tell how many people can go there. So it's really silly what's happened. Thank you very much, and good night.
Right, it doesn't look like we have any other speakers for this item. So with that, we'll go ahead and close public comment. And we had a motion and second on the floor for nominating Commissioner Pilch as the new chair. So on that motion, I'll go ahead and call it one last time here. Commissioner Donaldson?
Yes.
Commissioner Momin?
Yes.
Commissioner McLeod?
Yes.
Commissioner Pilch?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So that passes 5-0. And would anyone like to make any nominations for vice chair?
Does anyone want to be vice chair?
Yeah.
Well, I've been around now long enough. I guess I could do it if it would be acceptable.
I'll nominate Commissioner McLeod.
I second.
Okay.
I will gladly call the vote one last and final time here, just for the sake of ease. So we've got a motion on the floor and a second to nominate Commissioner McLeod as the vice chair. So on that vote, Commissioner Donaldson?
Yes.
Great. Commissioner McLeod?
Yes.
Commissioner Momin?
Yes.
Commissioner Pilch?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So that
Okay.
also passes 5-0.
Thank you.
So congratulations to both Commissioner Pilch and Commissioner McLeod. With that,
and I want to say thank you, Elizabeth. You've done a very good job. I agree with Jeremiah's comments, and you've really run some very good meetings. And thank you for carrying us through the Zoom era as well.
hopefully have gotten us through that era and we can be back in person here shortly. I know in my day job, we're going back in March, so hopefully soon. With that, we will just wrap this agenda then. Item 9, next meeting, March 9th, I think, same virtual platform for at least one more meeting.
Okay.
As far as we know.
That's right.
All right.
As far as we know, that it will be Zoom and until the state of emergency is modified by the governor.
Interesting. We're having our first one in person March 10th. So
okay.
Anyhow, things are changing. So with that, though, we'll go ahead and adjourn this evening's meeting. So thank you all and congratulations again. Thanks for the long night.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all.